Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, June 6, 2016 City Council work session. At this time, I will call the meeting to order. And we're going to start right off with Matt here, who we are Skyping in. How you doing, Matt? How you doing, Matt?
How are you guys doing?
Great. We had to just make sure we had you off mute and all that good stuff. The first thing we're going to talk about is retail marketing for Watertown, the opportunities that you guys can present to us. And it's good to see you again from Las Vegas, absolutely. So I'm going to let you guys just go ahead and talk to our city council. There's 10 of them here that make the decisions on what we do and do not do for the city, and we'll take it from there. Fair enough?
Perfect. Well, I'm do some technical stuff real quick and share my screen with you all. Can you all see my the Retail Strategies logo?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Well, to introduce can you all see me still? See the logo.
Yep, you're looking good.
All right. Okay. So my name is Matthew Peter. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Retail Strategies. I'm very excited to be talking with you guys about what we do at Retail Strategies. And Beth Miller to my right is the portfolio director. And if we have the privilege of working with Watertown, Beth will be the primary point of contact. Beth has spent the past 10 years in retail real estate leasing and managing millions of square feet of retail space throughout the country. So she's very experienced and would be a very good member of your team. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation here. Should take about 10 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So let's do this. All right, so first off, obviously, thank you for the opportunity to present to you what we do at Retail Strategies. I think that you're going to find what we do and provide to communities throughout the country fits in line with the needs of your community. So currently, 70% of the world retail chains are going to expand this year, which adds an incredible endorsement for physical retail space. And Mayor, you saw, out at Recon this year in Las Vegas, there was over 40,000 attendees, which was the best attended ICSC since the recession, meaning retail is back, retailers are expanding, and it's time for your community to put your best face on and approach them about opportunities to expand into your market and why Watertown is a destination. So what we're here to do at Retail Strategies, if we have the privilege to do so, is leave our mark on your community and leave a lasting impact through retail and retail attraction and development to the community. So our team at Retail Strategies features over 26 retail real estate professionals with 180 plus years of retail real estate experience. We average on a client to staff ratio is 5-to-1, meaning we're very hands-on. Members of our team have worked in a retail real estate capacity for the logos that you see below our team: Costco, Cushman & Wakefield, Publix, BJ's Wholesale, Home Depot, etc. We are cut from the retail real estate cloth. We know what retailers need to expand. We know how to approach them, and we know what they're looking for. So the goals of each partnership are to increase the tax revenue, attract the desired businesses to the community, to improve the overall quality of life, and to create jobs within the market. But at Retail Strategies, it's not about what we're going to give you. We're going to give you more data, more real estate knowledge than you could ever want to have. But it's really about what we're going to build together in your community. So our process begins with market analysis, taking the deepest dive into the community as humanly possible to understand what makes Watertown unique, what are the strategic data points that we need to present, what's the good pieces of real estate that the real estate director at Shopco or Home Depot needs to see. We take all of that, the market analysis, so that's data, real estate, and obviously the community input, and create a strategy around that. That strategy is presented to you roughly day 90 to day 120. And then we go out and implement that strategy on your behalf. So we task with a professional like Beth with calling on property owners, brokers, developers to tell them what the city has hired us to do and how we can be a resource to them. And then we have retail recruitment professionals behind Beth who will be calling on the retailers and developers throughout the country to show them why Watertown is a destination, why they need to locate there. And obviously, at the end of that will be your results. And again, it goes over those goals that we just talked about: increased tax revenue, job creations, and new business opening their doors in your market that you want to see. But the thing about what we do is that it's a never-ending process. As new retailers come to town, that opens the door for you to attract other retailers. So we are here to be your long-term advocate and partner to attract retail not only today, but in the future as the community grows. So that's a brief 30,000-foot version. I'm not going to kind of dive into some of the unique things that we do in each of these phases, but keep in mind there's a lot that I'm not covering just for time's sake. So again, the market analysis is research analytics, completely understanding the community. From a real estate perspective, it's identifying underutilized and strategic real estate assets. And the community input is we want to become invested in Watertown and what you want your community to be from a retail perspective. We take into account, from a research perspective, the trade area identification, gap analysis, psychographic profiles, real estate. It's bringing our team of retail real estate professionals to Watertown to be in your community, driving the market, to again identify those areas for leasing, development, redevelopment, identifying traffic patterns, key intersections, etc. And then obviously community input. We have a back and forth dialogue with you, not only through the first 90 days, but throughout the life of our partnership, to understand what is going to be desired business, what's undesired within the community. What businesses do you want to try to not recruit because it could cannibalize some great entrepreneurial opportunities in your market, etc. So one of the unique things that we do that I spoke with the mayor about is this mobile data collection, where we can essentially put a radius ring around a retailer in your market and identify where consumers are coming from based upon their cell phone and their locations-enabled services. So in a market like Watertown, which you trade from a very, very large area, retailers will have a tough time identifying how large that area is, unless other retailers are sharing how the store is performing. So this is a great way to define your trade area very accurately, and we can approach retailers with this information. In addition, psychographic segmentation. So it essentially is demographic shorthand. It's identifying what type of consumer is in your market from a demographic, wage, occupation, consumer behavior, attitudes, preferences, etc. And retailers want certain types of consumers in the market, and this is the analysis that shows them who is in the community and why they should be interested. Gap analysis, which is probably the most commonly known, it's the number of dollars leaving your community on an annual basis. For grocery and sporting goods and other categories, this information is critically important. But for fast food, full-service restaurants, and others, gap analysis really doesn't hold a lot of weight, simply because gap analysis is looking at the number of dollars leaving the community. Meaning, if McDonald's and Burger King were on the same corner, a gap analysis may say that's probably not the best thing to happen. However, they want to be on the same corner because that's what the consumer pattern is, and there's a critical mass that happens where if McDonald's line is back up, then you may say, I only have 15 minutes for lunch, I'm going to go to Burger King. So they like that being close to each other. So to help kind of combat that, but also to identify realistic opportunities in each community, we do a peer analysis where we look at communities throughout the region to identify similar communities from a population, daytime population, gross leasable area, so the number of square feet that's in your market, and market supply, so what is going on in the market in terms of retailers doing business, and compare you to similar communities so that we can see that you are underdeveloped by 100,000 square feet of retail space, and you need 120 million in market supply to be at the analog average for your peers. And then we take that a step further to identify, okay, how do you stack up when we go from category to category? So as you can see, this particular community was lacking 8 food and dining establishments. So we go in and identify what are those 8 dining establishments that like cities like this market, but haven't yet located. And that's a great way to approach a retailer with, hey, look, we know you're in 6 similar markets. Why haven't you yet located in El Reno, Oklahoma? And it's typically is we haven't found the right site. And that's what we hear more times than not. And we ask the question, knowing the answer, when was the last time you looked? And typically the answer is a year or 2 ago, because they're not actively searching markets every day. They're waiting for their phone to ring, and that's why communities see so much value in retail strategies, because we are the ones who are bringing those phones to those retailers that we have connections with, which we have a Rolodex of 9,000 retailers where they want to expand their site selection criteria and who to contact. And we're contacting those people on an annual basis, or on a daily basis for your behalf. But again, that leads me into the real estate analysis of putting our feet in your market to completely understand it. It's real estate, underutilized and strategic real estate assets. So we identify, again, development opportunities, redevelopment opportunities, vacant space. Obviously, we look at all the signs. So who are the key brokers in the market? We talk to you, who are the key developers that have worked in the community before, and we start an outreach to them. And then again, obviously, community input, incredibly important because we want to help you build the community you want to live in. And I know Watertown has a unique community, and we're going to have to tailor our approach to fit what you guys need. So all of what I just said goes into the retail strategy, which is actionable strategies to attract targeted businesses to your market. And again, it's taking you through the highlights of what I just took you through. So your key demographic data points, your gap analysis, peer analysis, retail prospects, which is the most fun portion of the entire strategy, because we're talking about who we think we can get to open in your market over the course of a partnership. And this is an example of one of the pages of what a limited service restaurant, fast casual restaurant would look like if we presented it to you. It's an understanding of what the category is, and then the expanding retailers that would be attractive to a market like yours. So what I've just taken you through is about a 90-day timeline. If you guys hired us today, it would be 90 days because the conference schedule really ramps up in October. But a lot of communities that hire us in October, it's better for us to be at these conferences representing you than it is to be sticking to a 90-day timeline, because it benefits the community more for us to prepare to meet with somebody face-to-face than to present a presentation. But it's roughly a 90-day timeline. And then again, begins that proactive retail recruitment, and this would be your implementation team. So as you can see, we're going to dedicate at minimum 9 people to be working on this partnership on a daily basis, connecting the dots with retailers, brokers, developers to attract them to your market. We attend conferences nationwide. The mayor attended the largest one of the year, which is in Las Vegas, but there are other critical ones. Chicago, which is in October of this year, will be very beneficial, as well as New York City, which is the national show, will be very beneficial to Watertown. We create a marketing guide for you, and this marketing guide is based upon our 180 plus years of retail real estate experience. This answers the top 10 questions that a retailer or a broker is going to ask us in our initial conversations. So this is meant to not to completely sell your community, but to answer the initial questions so that we can get that next conversation, which is send me a site, send me the demographics on that site. And again, we know what retailer wants which demographics and how to package it. And then the flip side of this document is your market aerial view, which the mayor already has a great looking aerial view of Watertown, but it's just showing a retailer, hey, we're looking at this site next to Walmart on Highway 65. So we can show the retailer where the site is. And again, going back to my gap analysis discussion, retailers like to locate one near one another. So if we can show them that their co-tenancy that they typically like to have is next to them, then it's going to bode well for their community. And then the most important part, the most fun part for Beth and I is the results and growth. So again, we're going to present a strategy to you after 90 days. That strategy is the starting line. It's not a final document. Your market's going to change, retail's going to change, the economy's going to change, whoever our president is, that's going to change in November. So we have to continuously update. Retail expansion and trends. Each month we offer the opportunity for our clients to get on a webinar with retail real estate industry leaders. Thus far this year we've had Smashburger, Smoothie King, Pivot Sporting Goods, and others. But in addition, we update you on if Kmart's going out of business in certain areas, we update you on that. In addition, we're your research concierge. Any research you need, you just call us and we're going to get it to you. So I'm going to take you through a brief success story that's not too terribly far from where you guys are located in Moline, Illinois. It was Dick's Sporting Goods. So during our market analysis, we identified that sporting goods was an opportunity from a gap analysis. From a peer community perspective, we identified that most peer communities had an academy or a Dick's. And then when we're looking at the real estate, we said, you know what, they have a piece of real estate that could attract a big box retailer. So in the strategy, we outlined that Dick's was a major prospect. It was a prospect for a particular site. And then the psychographic shows that the Dick's consumers are in the market. So we began reaching out, proactively recruiting. So the portfolio director called on the mall manager in Moline, Illinois. The retail recruiter started calling on Dick's, and we leveraged relationships. And Dick's Sporting Goods signed an LOI to open in the South Park Mall in Moline, Illinois. Dick's averages 10+ million in sales per store, adds 50+ jobs, and it took an underutilized piece of real estate in Moline, Illinois, and added a major national tenant that is very good credited, and the community really rallied behind it. So again, the same process that I've just discussed with you that we would take on behalf of your community is the same process we took in Moline, obviously tailoring it to their needs and their real estate. So what the broker in the market who did the Dick's Sporting Goods deal said is that all Retail Strategies is doing is maximizing the opportunities for Moline to get potential users in the market. And the reason for that is that Jeff Miller, not only leases space in Moline, he leases spaces in several other markets. And he doesn't, pick one or the other because of who the city is. But because of Retail Strategies, we're able to put Moline on a platform that they could not be on using the private sector. In addition, Ray in the city of Moline gave us all the credit in the world in the paper saying, we were the people who came in and closed the deal, which we don't want to pound our chest that much, but we certainly were able to leverage relationships and work and do exactly what we promised the city of Moline to create this end result for them. So I just gave you a ton of information, and I'm going to kind of take you through some key takeaways if some of it is lost. Research is critical, but real estate's always going to win. You need to enlist real estate professionals to help you identify opportunities, because research is just going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. It's not going to help you do a lot to fix it. Retail recruitment is a challenge. And it's the next bullet point too. Retail recruitment's not an event. Recon's great. We have 250+ meetings with retailers, brokers, and developers on behalf of our clients. But deals get done at Recon, but not every deal gets done at Recon. The process takes time, and we do our best to help manage expectations. But the good thing for Watertown is that 70% of retailers are going to expand this year. So it's a great time to get into the game. So to close, Beth and I have done a tremendous amount of research on Watertown. I've met with the mayor on multiple occasions, and there's no question there's a lot of potential, and we hope that we can have the privilege of being your partner to help bring that home. So with that, I'll stop talking and go back to my camera and see if you guys have any additional questions for me.
Matt, I think I'll open this up for conversation with anybody on the council that wants to ask questions. I do have one quick question though for you, Matt. What sets you apart from the Buxtons?
So Buxton, without saying anything negative about them, is an analytical research firm who wants to sell you an app, who wants to sell you data, who wants to tell you that they can introduce you to retailers at ICSC events and things of that nature. But what I'm here to tell you is that time is your most critical resource, and they aren't giving you time. What they're doing is putting more work on your plate to go out to these retail establishments and try to speak a language that you aren't used to speaking, which is the commercial real estate language. So what we're providing not only is the world-class, industry-leading research and analytics, but also real estate acumen and experience, and a team that's going to go implement this strategy on your behalf. We're also less expensive than Buxton is.
Matt, I have a question for you. And perhaps you've already shared this with the mayor, but do you have a list of similar communities to Watertown, the type of community that we are, and the successes that you've had, the different retail places that you have recruited for them?
Absolutely. So I would say that Woodward, Oklahoma is similar, and so is Liberal, Kansas. I can shoot you some articles from both. In both, we have helped recruit a restaurant to each market. We are only a year and a half into Liberal. They've also had a Walmart neighborhood market located in Liberal. Woodward, again, we have a restaurant that's going to locate within the community, and we're helping them with several others. What I will tell you is that our contracts are year to year. We ask for a 3-year commitment, but we know we can't bind you to a multi-year agreement. So each one of those contracts has been renewed each year, and each one of those clients is tremendously happy. But Woodward and Liberal are both like you. Essentially, you're an island market. You serve such probably at least an hour drive time as both of those communities do.
I'm going to ask another question. How many communities do you currently work with in this capacity?
We have 113 communities, active communities in our book of business. We have 26 employees. So again, it's a 5-to-1, maybe even a little less than that staff to client ratio.
Typically, in let's say we were to agree to sign on with you guys, typically, how long does it take you guys to really get going and start seeing some results? Or I know that's kind of maybe a tough question to answer, but
it is. It's always a double-edged question, especially because I don't know if there's media there. I've been quoted before saying something that I did not say. So I'm going to try to answer this question as easily as I can.
Yeah,
to give
Matt,
you a definite
our
timeline.
guys wouldn't do that, would they? Huh? No, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do it to you, Matt.
To give you a definite timeline would be advantageous. If I knew what retailers were going to locate in Watertown, when and where, I'd just go do those deals. Typically, again, it's a 90-day ramp-up period. Because we just came back from recon, we've had a lot of movement in a lot of our client communities. Just today alone, we identified a grocer that told us we want to be on this site, help us get there. So results, meaning new businesses coming out of the ground, you're talking 2 to 3 years. Just because when it's multiple parties, it's multiple uncontrolled variables, it's lawyers, it's everything. Knowing that retailers are interested, that's going to happen in the first 6 to 12 months. Now, because what we do in our industry, loose lips sink ships. If a property owner knows what tenant's interested, their price could go up, which could mess up the deal. So from a reporting standpoint, we have 1 or 2 main points of contact who know exactly what's going on in the market. But we also provide reporting letting you know that, hey, there's a grocer interested in the market. There's 3 restaurants interested in the market. So we do it in a way that we can share with you, but it's not going to prohibit you from attracting those retailers to the community. But to answer your question even further, have we had new retailers locate in the first year? Yes. But that wasn't retail strategies pumping up the ball and putting the ball on the field. That was the retailer was interested in a specific site and we helped close the deal. But again, from start to finish, a typical retail real estate transaction is anywhere from 18 to 36 months, depending on the size of the retailer. A Dunkin' Donuts will be quicker. A Target will be much longer.
Matt, you probably said earlier in your presentation, how long has your business been in existence?
We have been established as retail strategies for 5 years. This was an idea that we had, that our principals had for 10 years, and they were asked by a city in Alabama to come in and help them recruit retail. And they recruited Home Depot, and Home Depot did their first small market store. It's the smallest store, the first store in the smallest market they had ever done. And that was about 6 or 7 years ago. So then they put the wheels in motion for retail strategies. And what we identified was that there are competitors of ours, and I say competitors loosely because we do compete over the same dollars from communities, but they take a completely different approach. We've developed this company in such a way that we can provide value to you through quality of service and quality of deliverables. So while we've been around for 4 years, we've hired industry professionals. Joe Kucharski, who runs our Green Bay, Wisconsin office, he was the primary site selector for Costco. He was the primary site selector for our VP of Real Estate of Shopko, Hometown, Office Depot, and others. We just hired a guy named Bo Young, and Bo's been in the industry for 25 plus years doing development and leasing. Beth has been in the industry for 10 years. So while Retail Strategies as an established company has been around for 5 years, the people that we have hired have been in this industry for a long, long time.
You mentioned one of the characteristics of Watertown being we're a highway community. What else have you learned about us, and what challenges do you see that we face?
So challenges will be distribution. I think that's going to be a challenge to identify who has the distribution capabilities to get to the community. I'm looking at my notes here. The good thing for you is that you have a lot of great national tenants that are there. Target, Buffalo Wild Wings, Jimmy John's, others. So our job is going to be to connect the dots with retailers who may be unfamiliar with your market, because the reality is it's not an easy market to get to. So we're going to have to bring the real estate and package it and put it on their doorstep and do the homework for them. So the difficult part for retailers is why partnering with us would be a very good move for the community. Because we can take what makes going into Watertown difficult, its location, and make that very easy for a retailer to understand.
Do you see a lot of the major box?
Challenges of entering the market, again, distribution but that's not a Watertown problem. That's an every market problem.
Do you see a lot of the major corporations, box stores that are starting to downsize into the smaller communities, such as Kohl's and organizations such as that?
Yes. So downsizing is the wrong word, because that'll scare Wall Street. The term is right sizing. But they have done smaller format stores and understood that, or after post-recession, or let's talk about the recession. The recession was all about major metros, right? Because it's no-brainer decisions. As long as the real estate makes sense, major metros have the population density. But what they've identified is that, coming out of the recession, they can be just as successful in Watertown as they can be in other communities, especially some of the suburbs and secondary, tertiary markets. So, yes, they are doing smaller format stores. I got an update today about another slew of clothing and apparel stores downsizing their footprint, or right-sizing their footprint to do smaller formats so that they can enter more markets.
Matt, I have another question. In your presentation, you had mentioned that you involve real estate folks in your process. What exactly would their role be in this process?
So we have our Beth, who would be your primary main point of contact. Beth will be everything Watertown. Clay Craft will be your retail development director. Clay Craft will be everything Watertown, calling on property owners, brokers, developers, retailers. Brandon Cummings, Ford Fitz, Retail Development Associates, they're going to be doing a lot of the hunting for retailers. Clay is essentially is tasked with your community to work on the real deals that are in the market. We have people behind him that are drumming up the opportunities. The executive team, myself, Lacey Beasley, Robert Jolly, and Meade Silsby, we are here to support Beth, Clay, and the rest of the team. Typically, Meade or Robert's in on the boots on the ground analysis. But at these conferences, if there's an opportunity that Clay needs help with, or somebody needs help with, we jump in on those meetings. I mean, the mayor saw at Recon, we had 14 tables that were booked from 10 to 4 for the 2.5-day period. And it's a collaboration, it's a team effort. We give you dedicated professionals like Beth to be there every day, but we also leverage the connections across the country. We have a grocer that's located in Colorado that is really active in the Southeast right now. So the person who has that connection is helping the person who's working in the Southeast leverage that today. So we give you essentially 3 to 4 dedicated people that Watertown is on their list every day, but then we'll also have a back end support of the rest of the team to make opportunities happen.
Matt, I have a question. In regards to communities that you have worked with, what would the closest community be to Watertown, and how do you work with communities that might be within a competing market area?
That's a great question. Closest to Watertown would probably be, I would guess, Dubuque, Iowa would be the closest, just off the top of my head. And to answer your second question, we don't. If Watertown has a direct competitor, we will not go work with a direct competitor. It's a conflict of interest to us. Again, we want to lock arms with you and be your long-term partner, and that's not a good way to start a partnership, is to go after the city next to you that competes every day with you. There's a language in the agreement that we would sign that would prohibit us from going and doing that, but I'll tell you that we would never even need that language because we're not going to do that to you.
One last question I have is, now some of those names that you showed up there as far as prospective businesses or companies, a number of those are franchise type companies. In those cases, do you work with the namesake company? Let's just use McDonald's as an example, or do you communicate, I should say, with franchisee people that would be maybe already own stores, that type of thing? How do you work with them?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways of going about it. One is we know which retailers are franchise organizations and which retailers are not. But there's two ways of figuring out. You can go into the market and know that this is the franchisee for this area, or you can call the retailer and they'll direct you to the franchisee that has already purchased the rights to that area. So we'll go work both ways. If we need to work with corporate because it's a corporate store, we'll go to corporate. If we need to work with the franchisee who's purchased the rights to your area, we're going to go work with the franchisee.
Matt, out of that 70% of the people that are looking, or the businesses that are looking to expand, what percentage are looking for communities, agriculture communities of 25,000 people with radius of 100,000?
To put that in an exact percentage, I cannot do. But what I will tell you is that in markets like Watertown, looking at our retail recruitment efforts, it is not uncommon to see upwards between 75 and 100 retailers that have been contacted, over a 2 or 3 year period. I would say that, starting out, there would be between 40 and 50 retailers that we would target. And look, we could make you a list as long as you want, but the reality is there's only about 30 to 50 opportunities that would be expanding that we can capture on your behalf on a yearly basis. So it's a matter of, it's a numbers game. We want to fish in the pond that's got the most fish that are expanding. So again, it's all based upon what retailers are looking for, who's expanding, but essentially it's in the first year, we will at minimum contact 50 retailers on your behalf with specific sites. And that's one of the things I need to mention is that we can't just contact a retailer and say, what do you think about Watertown? Because that retailer is going to get mad that we just asked about a community. They want to see a site. They want to see a deal, because that's how they're paid, is by getting deals done, by locating new retailers. So our job is to identify the real estate in your market, which retailers fit, and then promoting that to them as a good expansion opportunity for them.
So Matt, when you said that you wanted to look at a site and such, would you then come out here and kind of take an inventory of what's available and what we have to offer?
Exactly. That would be done within the first 90 days. More than likely, it would be myself and Clay Kraft, or another one of our members of our executive teams, and Clay Kraft. We like Clay, who again would be the retail development director, to be able to put his eyes on the market he's tasked with promoting and with attracting new business to. So yes, that would happen within the first 90 days. Okay. And we have software that we utilize for that as well.
All right. I've got some time here. If there's anybody from the audience wants to come up and ask Matt a question, I'm open for that, because you might have a question that we're not thinking of. Mike, David, any of you guys? I'm open. Tim, come on up. Show me your taser and whack one of us. Anybody else? You guys got any questions that you want to ask them? Well, if not, well, Matt, thank you. I tell you, we have got a couple of, for sure, one other firm that'll be coming here in a couple of weeks that we'll be discussing, and then we will, because there's never anything decided or action taken at a work session. So what we'll do is we'll visit with other folks and
We didn't discuss numbers, but I assume you have some numbers
yeah,
to
Matt, you'll be
communicate?
sending us a proposal, what the costs are, and things such as that.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Yeah, that would be good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It went very, very well. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great evening.
Is he gone? I have a little story for you guys, which I thought was quite interesting. John and I had a meeting with a guy that does the same stuff, and his website looked very good, and everything looked really nice. And he said, I forget his name, if it was Mickey or Ricky or something like that. He said, "I'll call you, Mayor, when I've got opening now." So about 10 o'clock, we got a call, and he says, "Well, come up the escalator." This is huge buildings. There's thousands and thousands of square feet of this stuff. And he says, "Come up the escalator, hang a right, then hang a left, and when you see two shoe shine booths, I'm right in the middle." So I really assumed that he was going to have like a booth there. We get up there, we go up the escalator, we hang a right, we hang a left, and we're seeing this guy. He's standing there with a friend of his with a briefcase in his hand. He says, "I want to work for Watertown." I'm thinking, okay, yeah. So I will tell you, we had much better interviews than that particular one. Just a little heads up. And I like these people. I think we have questions. I think when you see the next company that will come out here and give us a presentation, I think you'll be very happy with that one. So anyhow, we're going to move on. Discussion on the conversion of one-way streets to two-way streets in the downtown area. Shane, you kind of brought this up to us. You wanted to bring this on the work session and give us a little heads up what you're seeing and what's going on.
Yeah, I thought it would at least be good to discuss the issues that we would have to look at in doing the conversion from one-way to two-way. And thanks to technology, we can actually all ride in the same vehicle together via the internet. So with that, I'll just jump right in here. This is
So Shane, maybe we should be clear that this isn't anything that says we're going to do
no, this
two-way
is
streets.
this is just
kind
the
of showing
concepts of what would take to do it.
what
Yep.
would take place
Yep,
if
what-
they were to
The
make
type of
that
things we
decision.
need to look at,
Okay.
yeah. So this is the intersection of East Kemp looking back to the east, and Highway 81, of course, is the crossing street here. First thing that jumps out at you is if this was going to support traffic moving in all four directions, is there is no mast arm hanging out over here that has a traffic light on it. So we would have to visit with the DOT folks and design a system that added another leg here if we're in fact going to keep another street or keep the street light versus a four-way stop. And I think what we'll find is that these intersections are going to be busy enough that we'll want to maintain the traffic lights. But so that jumps out. That'd be one thing. And then as you look going forward, you know, there's street signs that are all facing the same direction. So we'd have to identify what street light. Yeah. Obviously, somebody was driving the wrong way.
We're thinking it. I'm thinking it's Mike's truck last year. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a for instance. Yeah, I thought that was ironic as well, but somebody pre-testing our ideas here. But so we would identify the street signs. As you can see, there's yellow markings on the street. Fortunately for me, they blur all that stuff out, so I can't be accused of that. But yellow paint here would indicate that there'd be a no parking sign from here to corner type of sign. We'd have to get rid of all the one-way signs along the route. Couple key things, of course, we have to change the striping. These would be angled the opposite direction that they are. Centerline stripes would have to be yellow, not white, and probably be a double yellow line to be consistent with no passing zone type things. Just going through my list, we'd have to reverse all these traffic signs that these are hanging on both sides of the street. A sign like this, I'll get down to another example. See that signs are facing the wrong way, so we would spin those around and get those headed the right direction. We'll have to look at all of these handicap parking spaces and maybe adjust those a little bit to make sure that they stay accessible for the handicapped folks. So that kind of stuff. We would convert these intersections up here.
I think most of the handicaps are by the alleys, right? Because so they can have the extra
Typically,
room.
but when you reverse your street signage, then that parking space would
Have to
hang
go
out
on
in
the
front
other-
of the alley, so I have to move it from one location to another. So that's the kind of minor things that we would have to tweak along.
I was just curious, you say double yellow lines. Why would we need lines at all?
Well, normally we wouldn't, but if we're gonna push people closer together in this district, we'd probably want a line to just kind of indicate whose space is what, because right now what you'll see, even though they're traveling the same direction, people crowd or drive over that white dashed line that's there now, and that's an issue. If you're gonna have them coming opposing each other, you want to kind of define where the true center is.
Okay. Are you gonna put the angled parking? Probably would be a stronger angle, you think, or?
Yeah, that would be something we'll have to look at. Yeah, and those are details that are even finer than what we're talking about now. But yeah, that's the general ideas that we're talking about here. And even with that, the existing striping would either need to be scrubbed off the roadway by either grinding them off or power washing or something. One way to do that quicker that we're considering is whether or not we would just seal coat the street, cover up all the paint lines, and then repaint everything the way we would want them. So there's some options that we have to talk about, but there again, that's the finer end of the design. We would propose that these stoplights be removed and just four-way stops put in rather than continue with the stoplights, mostly because I don't think that we're going to have the pressure of a lot of volume going through these intersections. It's just as quick to stop and go and wait, take your turn here. It's not like we have blocks and blocks of traffic stacked up behind these. So that would be one of the things that we would want to consider doing. I'll run up to the next intersection. One of the things we need to talk about too is these tall poles that had the mast arms on them for the traffic signals also contain a crisscrossed wire here that hangs Christmas decorations and other community event banners. So we would have to think about whether we would want to retain those poles for that purpose, or if that's something that would go away and we would redo the Christmas decorations a different way or things. So kind of things that you probably wouldn't normally identify with changing a one-way to a two-way. But so that's kind of the stuff that we'll put together a plan if we decide to go forward with this thing and kind of decide how they would be implemented and when, and then when we're ready, then we would ask for the switch to go from a one-way to a two-way. But Broadway intersection's very similar to Maple. It has the crisscross wires up here again. They're hard to see in this view, but they're there. Again, we would do a four-way stop sign arrangement here, not a stoplights. Just an example of a handicap spot that wouldn't be able to function exactly like it is today is this would have to start over here and come out. So this marking sign would have to be moved over to a new location, and then we of course have to design that so that they can back out safely without backing over the crosswalk type of situation. So those are the minor details that become important when you look at the overall scope of making a conversion like we're considering here. And you know, one other thing to identify is these bigger signage pieces that were attached to those mast arms will go away as well. So thankfully we have smaller signage also in the intersection, but you know, they're going to be less identifiable than the big sign. But so just little things like that. You get down to the other end of this project, and then there's some other unique things that we got to deal with. There's a lot of cars on the street today when this photo was done. Heading down to the end. Okay, so all of this striping here would need to be reconfigured according to the new traffic pattern. And, you know, again, you get to the other side of the roadway, and there's that double line that we talk about, you know, and these arrows would change. The double line is kind of what you would see in a situation where you're trying to define the center line. Whoop, I went too far. There's some signs here that need to be removed. You can see signs that do not enter and restrict the turning movements. So all those would be removed or adjusted accordingly. So I'll just quickly take you the opposite direction down first.
Shane, while you're moving, I believe I heard in one of the previous discussions on this that they'll do away with all those big overhead lights. There'll be more of a lamp post thing. Is that the case?
Well, they're at the intersections where those are attached to mast arms, they might go away. Otherwise, that's a different level of discussion for this. I think that's something that would probably come more out of a downtown revitalization project where you change your lighting to something else rather than do that just because you're changing traffic patterns. But it certainly can be implemented together, but I think it's a separate discussion.
Shane or Mayor, is this strictly a local decision? And the reason I asked that question, I'm dating myself. I remember back when Herb Jensen was mayor, we thumbed our nose at some federal regulation concerning traffic flow or parking on Kemp Avenue because it made Paul Harvey national news for a time. Is there anything that, I mean, is this strictly our decision to make?
My understanding, it is our decision. Yep. One of the things, too, to kind of go on, this is going to be in front of you guys tonight with the Strong Towns engagement. Strong Towns is actually going to come up here and also talk about the two-way streets, you know, whether it be Camp or First Avenue. It'll be a big discussion. He was really involved with the charrette that was just recently done. So we'll be asking for that to come up and give us a little more insight as to if we should or should not even consider these. But back to that, Glenn, I have not heard of any other. But people have said that to me. I think David Law, you asked me that, didn't you?
I remember hearing something about that there was some federal funds used in some fashion or other when that was converted, and whether that means we got to get some kind of a okay from somebody, or if that timeline's long since passed and doesn't make any difference anymore, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like who goes to jail? Probably the guy that's driving backwards on Kemp Avenue. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, my first step will be to reach out to the DOT and let them know that we're considering something like this and ask them, the first question is if they agree or not, to let us change those intersections, especially as they encounter Highway 81, because that changes their use as well. And we'll see a little bit more when I get back over on that end on First Street, or First Avenue. But anyway, that's the first step, I think, for me, is to reach out to them and let them know we're even thinking about it and get some feedback, and then go from there.
Shane, I think you want to check with Rob on that, because I know Rob, me and Rob have had quite a few discussions over this, especially on First Avenue South. He has reached out to DOT and has had their blessing on First Avenue South, so.
Okay. Yeah, Rob and I are working on this together. This isn't just a engineering project. This is a project for both of us to work on together.
Shane, typically speaking, does a two-way driving lane, is it typically wider than a driving lane for, two parallel, go in the same direction one-ways?
Not really. Typically, we try to keep a minimum lane width of about 11 feet.
No matter what direction,
No
whether you
matter
got
what
two of them
direction.
going this way or two going the same way?
Right. When it's opposing, it is desirable to have a 12-foot lane or more, but, most rural highways is a 12-foot lane going opposite directions at 50 miles an hour or more. So it's not an uncommon thing to feel like you're enclosed in town when you do change it to opposing traffic, but in reality, it's almost the same dimensions as you're used to out on the highway.
What is it down there now?
We could get 11-foot lanes, I think, especially if we play with the angle of the parking a little bit.
But you don't think we have that today, though?
We have approximately 50 feet from curb face to work with, and so if you take the 22 feet out of that, we have roughly 30-some feet left, and that's what our parking.
Hey, Shane,
We have to.
the one of the reasons I understand I read was for a lot of the one-way streets is that the left-hand turn issue. If you have two-way, it slows traffic down. Is there any opportunity for us, we have to take up some parking spots if we wanted to set up a left-hand turn lane? Is that even feasible for us to do that?
There again, I don't know that there's enough traffic pressure to necessitate that. I will say that in a lot of situations where you have that and somebody's going straight, the presumption is that if you're turning right, you're allowed to pull up to the right of that first vehicle and make your turn. And I think PD would probably back me up, and that's a wrong presumption, but people do it all over. Probably not the safest idea when you could wait 2 seconds and be the next first car in line to make that turn. But to be honest with you, I drive this route every day to work and home and back, and very rarely is there more than 3 cars sitting in an intersection waiting to proceed through it. So I don't see a lot of pressure on it, and I assume I'm driving through at some of the higher pressure times, 8 o'clock in the morning and noon and 5, so I just don't see the pressure there.
Shane, I was just going to make a comment too. I know that we talked about wherever we got a light right now, would we envision 4-way stops at every corner?
Sure.
So I will tell you, if you've been in Brookings, which you're a South Dakota State
Yep.
man, right?
Yeah.
You go down Main Street, I don't have a problem with that. You got to stop every time. You get off to the side streets, and their signage and what they have for stop signs and not stop signs, and it's confusing as heck. When you get, they've got so darn many signs and corners you got to stop at that you.
Well,
It really is. Maybe it's just my age and my driving skills,
well,
but
it's
it really it's dumbfounding a little bit when you're there.
yeah. Well, it's a change in philosophy, because what the charrette and others try to tell us and advise us is that they want you to stop. They want you to look at the storefronts. They want you to see what's downtown rather than just race through it to get to the other side of town. And that's the philosophy change that would instigate a change from a one-way street to a two-way street. They encourage breaking the traffic down into segments so that you stop and look.
One of the other issues on that same scenario is that without the traffic being able to stop at each intersection, it's a much more dangerous environment for pedestrians and bicyclists. So by being able to just kind of keep going straight, a lot of times it's more difficult. And I see it downtown a lot where people have trouble navigating across, but whereas if you have a stop sign at each corner, I think, like he said, you're slowing traffic down, you're giving people an opportunity to see what's there, and you're making it much more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And if we're going to continue to encourage people to live downtown, to shop downtown, to own places downtown, you want it to be pedestrian friendly. So I think that's a thing to keep in mind as well.
I think, Mike, to your comment there, though, part of this discussion is going to be, obviously, camp needs to be slowed down, but the two First Avenues, obviously the one behind us, I think, probably that if you're going to want to get through town and not stop downtown, you're not going on camp. You're going on camp because you're downtown to do business, or you want to take a drive through, whatever. The next question is the other First Avenue. Is that, the stop signs maybe are on the side streets and the first goes through. So I think there's going to need to be some talk about that.
Yeah, First Avenue, as far as I know, the only intersections where it stops is at this intersection I have up here of Broadway. I think otherwise it's pretty much a straight through all the way.
The school would probably end up needing to have stop signs maybe where at the
we'd
school
have
down
to
there.
look at that. That's true. But right now there's no stop sign, but the traffic's only from one direction, so they only have to look one way to determine whether it's a safe crossing or not. So yeah, that could be another issue that we'd have to look at. But we'll continue driving down. Most of the items are the same, going the opposite direction. Now here's an intersection. Up here is the stoplight, and here there isn't. And I never see a car parked here for more than a few seconds. It's pretty much a stop, make sure you're clear, and you're going forward. So I don't see a lot of pressure to keep those stoplights in place, but there are a couple churches along here, so we might want to be mindful of their traffic patterns as well. The IC school, good points. Here we allowed the angle parking again through here. There's that pedestrian crossing. I'll back up. Because of the school, it does have the pedestrian, and if we switch the traffic, this sign will get turned around so that you see it from the other direction. But yeah, this, if Warrants needed it, we could make that into a four-way stop if we decide that we want to create a soft or safer crossing. But so those are the kinds of ideas that we have to think about and talk about.
Shane, typically do you lose spots? I've heard that when you change the traffic pattern, to two-way, that you would lose parking spots.
We may lose a couple here and there, but generally not. They're pretty even because you're just changing how they lay out. In other words, you might lose one at the south end of the block and gain one at the north end of a block. But just because the way you flip the lines, you should end up with generally the same amount of spots. Right.
What about delivery vans, like uptown? I see them parked all the time up there, and
Yeah,
I don't know if they were there years ago or if they
Right.
parked up on the street side or what.
Well, things are changing a little bit. Back in probably even not that far back, in our lifetimes, we could probably remember when deliveries came in a smaller straight truck and probably fit down the alleys real well. And that mentality is changing now. We're getting the bigger semis making deliveries. For sure, all the material that's coming into the Slumberland store and unclaimed freight stores are larger vehicles. They aren't the smaller straight truck anymore. So you do make this conversion. That is one thing that they've had a luxury of being able to park on one side and allowing traffic to go by them on the opposite side and stay in the same direction. So that's something that you would be giving up if the conversion's made, and we'll have to have that full discussion on how disruptive may that be or may that not be. And maybe what the real answer is there is that we continue to improve these alleys and encourage the trucks to use the alleys or side streets more, pull onto a Maple or pull onto Second Street or whatever and wheel something around the corner a little bit further.
It seems to me that
right in front of the
the
door.
times I've run into trucks downtown, they've been on the Maple or they're not on Kemp. I can't say that I've seen it on Kemp much.
Right. So
Both the ones you mentioned was Slumberland and Unclaimed Freight. Most of their stuff comes in through the alley, through the
Yep.
back door, so.
yeah, but it is difficult for them to get onto the alley. I mean, I have identified that. So, there's lots of discussions. Here again, First Street coming up to Highway 81, we'll have to change all of the striping. This sign probably wouldn't be necessary. This sign wouldn't be necessary. In this case, there are the proper lights on all legs, but we'd probably have to reset loops in here to function to allow the trigger mechanisms to go appropriate to what you want your traffic patterns to be. So if you wanted this would probably be a left turn only, and this would probably be a straight right type of situation instead of a straight, because here you have the left, a straight, and a right. But so that's the kind of stuff that we got to talk about. As far as impacts to the highway, I'll go down this way and just show you. See, this is traditionally the turning lane, and it's striped to not allow the left turn onto First Avenue. This would have to all be changed to the typical center left turn lane to allow that movement again. And that's where our partnership with the DOT and those kind of things are critical to make sure that they agree to us changing the traffic patterns on their road as well. So
I will tell you, just like when you saw me driving the wrong way on that other street, there is a lot of traffic that turns off this highway up this street.
yeah, and for us that are locals that have been driving it for a long time, I would say that there's probably very little errant driving on average, but there's always that person that does get confused, forgets which intersection they're on, or if they're from out of town, they certainly could get easily turned around. And so we're gonna have to think about that backwards, because we're gonna have to re-educate our locals that'll use these streets every day and often, that, yeah, it is two-way again. And, that, so it's gonna take a little bit of a PR campaign too, to kind of remind people that we've changed their normal activity and patterns, so.
We discussed this a while back already on First Avenue portion, and my 2 cents would be that obviously we consider both, and I think both end up being the end result, but I think we deal with First Avenue first and get that, if we're gonna do that first, because some of the other discussion on Camp was maybe doing some bump outs at the intersections and other things, and maybe that should just be planned as part of the whole process. So if you're gonna do anything with signage and all that, otherwise you're gonna put signage in and then end up having to move it and other things. So, where First Avenue, I don't perceive there'd be that type of thing going on. Plus that gives people a little bit of opportunity to start getting used to that one changing, and it just my feelings on that.
I would tend to agree with that. That would be the way I'd like to see it proceed, is at least start with one, and it'd be a lot easier to educate people that way as to what our changes are, so.
Shane, do we know what kind of, if we took the two streets that we're talking about and we went up and down to every one of those businesses that was there, do we know what kind of support there is for this today? I know that there's some of it's devil in the detail, right? So I can understand where some might be skeptical or against it, but do we know what kind of support we have today?
Other than the discussion that came out of the charrette, I don't know any specifics. I'm sure there's probably not all of them would embrace it, but I tend to think that probably the majority of them might.
Well,
Beth, you've been-
historically, there's been a lot of discussion against it, and I don't know if there would be or not. My point is this, it's easier to push your rope up a hill when you got 70% behind you pushing it. If you got 70% up in front of you stopping you, then it becomes harder. And I think we almost need to, Mayor and whomever, I think we need to do some kind of a quick check just to see where we're at on that. Like, I don't think the charrette would be indicative of what the level of support is throughout the uptown area.
And that very well could be.
I would tend to disagree with that. I mean, there's a lot of people from the downtown area that were very involved in the charrette. I mean, and that was one of the key issues with all the discussion on the charrette was to try to change those back to the other way. Yes, there is. I mean, after being on the Urban Renewal Board for a number of years, or a couple of years anyhow, yes, there are some people that are against it. But I would say that's a very small percentage. And as there's after the charrette and all the information that was brought forward with the charrette, there's a lot less of those people that were against it in the very beginning that are now. I mean, they do see a value in it, so.
I think that the education part of it is key, and I like the fact that next meeting, we have the gentleman from Strong Towns who can talk about the advantages and disadvantages for both. And, in any case, because I can understand concerns that businesses would have in both situations, but I think once a person is understanding the advantages and disadvantages of one-way streets versus two-way streets, and I know I did some research for some of you guys, and I found people who were advocates of one-way streets and people who were advocates of two-way streets, but some of the compelling things for me, and that was reduction in crime, increase in property values, and all those things went hand in hand with conversions of one-way streets to two-way streets. By traffic, pedestrian, we had, they were talking about auto thefts falling. They're doing some examples in some other smaller towns. Auto thefts fell 33% on a two-way, once they converted it to two-way. Appreciation of businesses increased an average of 11.6%. Meanwhile, the one-way streets depreciated roughly 0.4% over the same period of time. And I think those are statistics that once we start discussing those and seeing how they apply to our downtown and those businesses, and certainly hear from somebody who knows a whole lot more than I do, that we can again, group everybody together and say, okay, light bulb, maybe this does make sense and maybe this doesn't, so.
Megan, you just showed up. Did you catch Mike's question? Because I'd be interested to hear what your take is. You're downtown, and you work with the businesses downtown. Do you have any thoughts on what Mike asked?
Honestly, I think, Mike, you're on the right track. I think we need to go and survey people. We've heard strong opinions both ways.
Hey, Megan, I hate to do this to you, but you gotta come up here. Thank you.
As long as you're not going to make me pray.
No praying tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, we got that covered.
I think, Mike, you're onto something. I think by going business to business, that's probably the only true, we've heard both ways, but going business to business and visiting with those folks and getting an up or down, that's going to give us a lot better picture on the way people are feeling.
Well, and I think it's a gauge, it's a barometer for where we're at today. And I think as we learn more, we can go back to those that are opposed or that are unsure.
Then we know what we're working
then we know who we're
with. Yep.
dealing with and what we're dealing with. But
Agreed.
I think that's the only way that we know. If we,
I agree. I think we do need to query those folks, but I think it'd be, if there's a way that we could provide them with some information with the pros and cons ahead of time before we do that, so they do have an understanding of what the advantages would be to them to go to a two-way situation. I think that'd be helpful. And the other part of this too, I think, is a good idea from the standpoint that if we move forward with this, which in my opinion just makes all the sense in the world, I think that we get some buy-in from them. That would be important for us moving forward with these projects.
If we're gonna have this other gentleman come speak to us, I'd like to see two things happen: a survey of those people, and then and have the schedule for this, and have them invited. Everybody in part of that survey be invited to come to that, so they can make comments or whatever at that time. Because if there's a strong standing that doesn't like to see it, I need to hear their voice before we make a decision. Then
I know that we had some people who stayed with their opinion at the shred, and then after listening to the gentleman who's coming to talk to us, we had some people convert their opinion, and became a believer in two-way. So I think we're on the right track. I do like the idea that Bruce said about having pros and cons of it prior to just going around and taking a survey, because I think that would help people think about it a little bit, before they made their decision. But either way, the survey is a nice idea.
Megan, is it from a chamber standpoint? I mean, vast majority of them, if not all of them, are chamber members, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely something we can
Would
help
there
you
be a
with.
way to identify them on those two
Right.
streets and get some kind of an e-survey out to them or something?
Honestly, we found with uptown, downtown business owners, caught myself, that the best thing to do is probably canvas, just physically go door to door and carve out some time to do that. So you're getting in front of the person that actually is the decision maker in the business. And so if we sort of had a timeline, we would be glad to help you with that.
We got a little bit of problem there though too. You've
Come on,
got
Mike.
businesses and then you've got property owners, and I think that we need to
Right.
deal with both. Because
Right.
the business owner might have one opinion, the property owner another, so, and I think they both need to be involved, quite honestly. So where we can identify that, maybe part of that survey would be, are you an owner, or, and if you're not, then give us a name that we can get in contact with them or something too. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you're talking two different groups essentially.
Megan, is there a way that we can get the word out that we are going to have this fella on the 20th that's going to come in so they can watch it on TV for those folks?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yep, we sure can. Do we have details on it's the next work session, or we can coordinate with that, Mayor?
Yeah, because we have to actually have the council approve it tonight, that we're
Okay.
gonna even
Okay.
join that contract.
So we'll get the
with that
details.
agreement.
We're actually going to be going door to door with a lot of businesses in the next couple days, and so if we have stuff that soon, we can get it out to them in the next day or two.
Right.
Yep.
Mike, what do you got?
I agree with Bill. One thing is make sure that you're canvassing the right people. I've had people come to me with opposition of the one-way that don't even have businesses on the one-way that are around the corner or something, and they don't want a one-way for their business or the property owner. Well, it doesn't touch them physically. I think that when you do this, you want to make sure you're talking to the people that are actually involved in the businesses that are touching the one-way or the streets that are involved, because I've had a lot of opposition come from people that are on the other First Avenue, which has both directions, come up and tell me they don't want a one-way. Well, what does that represent to us on Kemp that do want the one-way? Because there's a lot of us that do. So I just want to make sure that I agree with Bill. You gotta talk to the decision maker, the person that has the building, because that's a major investment, as well as the business owner. Invite everyone up, and I think like the charrette came, there's a lot of people who've changed their mind and want the one way. So.
Well, thanks, Mike. So you
Want the two-way, sorry.
Well, I was just
Two-way.
gonna clarify that.
I'm all for the two-way. It takes me
Okay.
3 blocks to get to work that I shouldn't have to drive.
Kay or Mike, did you guys want to get up here and say a couple words or not?
That was one thing that I found through a lot of the studies through the urban renewal and working with Charette and stuff, is a lot of the opposition we had wasn't on Kemp or First Avenue South. It was all on the side streets, so.
I guess I
You got to
appreciate.
say your name, Kay.
Oh,
Come on.
Kay Solberg. I do appreciate the fact that you're going to go and ask the different merchants, because I know there are also a lot of business people that are on Kemp Avenue that want to leave it the way it is. Deliveries is a big thing, big thing. Whether your stuff is coming in by UPS, FedEx, whatever. Right now, if they're going like this and a truck stops, you can go around it without worrying that you're going to get hit from the other way. If there's a truck sitting there, they're not going to be going around anything, because they're going to be sitting behind that truck the entire time that delivery guy's making the delivery.
Yeah,
we
I
don't-
doubt I would wait that long.
But the other thing is, we really cannot afford to lose any more parking spots. And if you're changing the angle, it used to be when we first changed some of the angles a few years ago, and we lost some of the spots. Now the vehicles that we have people driving are bigger, the trucks are bigger. I know one lady who brought her husband's vehicle, and this just happened not too long ago, and parked it right on Kemp. The police came and said, your vehicle is too big for this parking spot. You gotta get it out of here and park on the side street or someplace. You cannot leave it there because it's sticking out too far. And so, going to a two-way, that's just gonna be creating it even harder. And we just can't afford to lose more parking. Last year, we lost 12 businesses in the uptown. And this year, we've already lost 4 or 5.
And we've had some real growth down there for other things, because I know now you drive down on any given night, and it's pretty darn busy, but
No,
thank you, Kay.
I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that those are things that you have to consider
Oh,
and think
absolutely.
about. And they are important to the business climate in the uptown.
Right, and we don't want to make things any worse than what they are. We're hoping that whatever the decision is made here, you know, throughout all the surveys and everything, that it'll all work out good. Anybody else? I see you
Yep.
back there, Mr. Cole. What's going on?
Okay, after working with the type of delivery company for 20 years that I did, and we worked in a lot of downtown districts, we didn't park our trucks on the street when we couldn't. I mean, if right now, if one's parked in the middle of Kemp Avenue and blocking one lane, that's in violation of city ordinance, even if it is one way.
Well, it's just a lot of businesses do not have alleys. And that's part of the problem. There's
Yep.
no place for
Yeah.
them to
Okay.
make deliveries to those businesses without.
Well, thanks, Kay and Shane. Thank you very much. There's a lot ahead of us here. I think we will. I don't think, Mike, did you want to say something? Cole? Okay. And drop that fake accent, will you?
Okay, Steve, I'll do my best. My name is Mike Cole. I do have a numerous amount of buildings that I own downtown. And I am actually with Kay because I do think there's going to be a large impact on also deliveries, obstruction of traffic when they are making those deliveries. And I just think, I'm just trying to figure out where is the sense coming in on all this. It seems to be functioning quite well as it is. Why do we have to change it to a two-way system? You want me to smile, buddy? Right?
You've been in that hot seat before, haven't you,
I
Mike?
have.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm asking you the question.
I think
Yeah.
really that question, Mike, has been kind of floated around on the council for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And I think the charrette has kind of brought it to the top. So I think we really need to look at it and understand it real well before we made any action.
I know from my perspective, Mike, one of the things that, when we talk about the change at the end of Camp, possibly with the First Avenue and whatnot, that becomes a whole conglomeration of a mess, in my opinion. If it's a two-way, it gets way different. So I would like to know, before we commit to making that all ramp into the one-way and then come back and say it should be two-way, that's just a whole different configuration, in my opinion, what happens down there.
Like you said earlier, like making First Avenue there, turning that into a two-way to start with is something possibly to look at before you even think about focusing on Kemp and see how it functions for a year or longer. But I feel, this is what I think you're gonna have parallel parking there, and I really think that it's gonna create a lot of problems there. Because like just Kay was saying that, obviously some of these pickups, extended cabs, extended boxes, they're a large vehicle. And if that's the only vehicle that a family has to transport their family around and come and shop in uptown, and they need to park that vehicle somewhere in that location, it's going to be very difficult for them to do that.
We are not narrowing the streets any, though.
I understand that.
Yeah, and we've had parallel parking up there, and
Yep.
it was horrible. So
Yes,
we don't want that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I would
That's-
not be an opponent of
Parallel parking isn't even in the thought process. I mean, we would still have the same parking as we have now. We're just going to change the angles two different
It's
directions.
not going to work, Randy. I don't see it working. I do not see it working with the width of the roads that we have there. Because I think as we go down Kemp Avenue, you go past, you get into Dr. Longworth's area there, and I feel that that road is somewhat more narrower there than what it is further east of there, actually, coming back into the uptown area. So I think those surveys need to be done also.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we need to engineer the whole thing and see how it's gonna come out before we do any changes.
Let's kind of wrap this up. If there's another question or two, we'll get moving on. Any other questions that we have for any of these guys? We still got about 8 minutes before council meeting, so if you have a question, throw it out. Well, comments or questions?
Mike, I'm going to answer your question from my perspective as to why is it being considered. Prior to being on the council, been on the council 5 years now, but prior to being on the council, I was on Plan Commission for about 8 years. And there were a number of times as we dealt with businesses during that time that those individuals, whether they were the property owners or the business owners, I guess I'm not sure whether they were both or but there were requests for that consideration. There's been times where for years and years, we've talked about the revitalization of our downtown area. And I think that's part of that discussion. It's a consideration. I think that's the process we have to go through.
Absolutely.
And this isn't Shane Waterman pushing this. I know that's who you turn
Well,
to.
I'm
But
targeting him because he's sitting right next to
okay,
me.
I understand, but I understand. But my point is, it's not him that's pushing this.
Yes.
It's the public that has pushed this,
I think
and it's been chosen to get picked up via.
I think it's the charrette that's brought this more to light.
I agree.
That's what I feel. So I think, yes, you must approach the business owners and also the landowners then, the property owners, and have their input. And then, like Bill was saying, probably bring everybody into the room, invite everybody that evening and have a sit-down, full discussion to see what sort of impact this will bring. And that's what I feel.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shane, thank you very much. I think, folks, at this time, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and we'll be back at 7 o'clock. Okay, guys, here we go. We're getting ready. Lights, action. You ready? Okay, well, welcome, everybody, to the Monday, June 6th, 2016 City Council regular meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and we will have a prayer by Reverend Sharon Bailey from First Congregational United Church of Christ. Is she here? I'm sorry, Stephen. I'm sorry. I don't have my glasses on, Steve, so I apologize for that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this day and all the opportunities that it presents. And we pray that we make the most of the opportunities that come our way. This evening, we are especially mindful of our community and the many opportunities we have to make it a better place for everyone. Help us to do what is right in your sight and improve the community in which we live. In particular, guide the body here assembled and grant it the wisdom and courage to make good and useful decisions for the welfare of all. Amen.
Thanks, Steve. I almost had to call up the chamber here, Megan, and just make sure that you were here or not, because if you weren't, she'd cover. Yeah, we had it. If I
could have a political moment, our church would like to see First Avenue be.
There you go. All right, man. I like it. Yeah. Okay, we will. Trust me, it's there. Thanks, Steve. All right. Okay, Shell, will you do a roll call for us?
Absolutely. Albertson. Here. Bueller. Here. Danforth. Here. Manti. Here. Riefenberger. Here. Roby.
Here.
Solom.
Here.
Thorson.
Here.
Tupper.
Here.
Vilhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. Okay, number one is approval of the consent agenda. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Wow, there's a ton of them there. I'm just gonna pick a couple. Okay, I got Beth and Don here. Any questions, any changes we need to make on that? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number two, approval of the agenda. I'll look for a motion and a second. I got a motion by Randy, second by Bruce. Any changes, any questions? Which one, Shell? Oh, the strong, I'm sorry, I do need to add this, guys. I need to add the Strong Towns Engagement Agreement. And we'll put that one as number, what, 14C or something to that effect. And we'll go Strong Town.
I will change my motion to make the change, to accept the agenda with the change. Strong Towns under 14C, did you say?
Yes.
And I will resecond. that
Okay,
motion.
so I have a motion by Randy, a second by Bruce on that. Any other questions, any other changes? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number three, application for a new retail on-sale malt beverage and retail on-off-sale wine license for Byron Shen, AKA Rachel, doing business as Downtown Sushi at 18 North Broadway. At this time, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this is your opportunity. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Glenn. Any questions on this? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. You're good to go. All right. In fact, folks, that's where her new sushi restaurant will be, is in the old Good to Go building on 18 North Broadway. Wonderful. Yeah, we're excited for you, Rachel. All right, thanks. Number four, application for a transfer of ownership and location of a retail on-off sale malt beverage license from Shiv Shakti LLC, doing business as Days Inn at 2900 9th Avenue Southeast, to Harry's Haircuts and Hot Towels LLC, which is inactive at 1522 Parkview Drive. At this time, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this, it's your opportunity. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Dan, second by Bruce. Any questions?
I do have one. What's the, I guess I'm kind of confused as to why we're doing a transfer just to put one inactive. I know that's legal and they can do it, but.
Right. This is Mike's deal, so we'll let him explain it.
Okay.
Well, I was dealing on a malt beverage video lottery license, and I was dealing on two, and just happened to get them both. So
Okay.
one of them will show up at the next meeting. I have it sold already. So, yep.
Any other questions for Mike? Any other questions at all? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number five, application for a transfer of ownership and location of a retail on-off sale malt beverage license from Golf on Kemp Incorporated, doing business as Golf on Kemp, which is inactive, at 1625 North Ridge Drive, Unit 214, to Harry's Haircuts and Hot Towels LLC, DBA Harry's Haircuts and Hot Towels at 16 West Kemp. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mike, second by Beth. Any questions for this one? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, thanks, Mike. Number six, application for a special retail wine license to the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce for the period of 5 p.m. Thursday, June the 9th of 2016 until 8:30 p.m. Thursday, June 9th, 2016. This time I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this, it's your opportunity. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Glenn, second by Beth. Any questions you guys might have?
Megan, what's the event? Because we got the next one too, right?
This is a lot of moving parts for me. This one is the wine walk for this
Oh, okay.
Thursday. I would tell you that maybe if you've been following Aberdeen news at all, they canceled a wine tasting event that they had up there. There were some questions with the Department of Revenue, a big event they had booked later on in the month. As a fundraiser, how our event differs, I spent a lot of time on the phone today with Department of Revenue, and we have Wade has been working diligently to make sure this is taken care of. We actually are purchasing the wine from the distributor, and they were getting a donation of the wine and turning around and making the profit off of that. So that's where the Department of Revenue gets involved. So we are completely free and clear and in check with both the city and the Department of Revenue.
I have to kind of chuckle because I've already bought tickets to this and you're just asking permission to do it.
For the record, this was supposed to be on the agenda a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, no, we are on the straight and narrow, Mike. I promise.
Scam.
Yeah, right. Yes, we're all law-abiding citizens now.
You guys, any other questions? This is a tough group tonight,
It
Megan, I'm
is.
telling you.
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard scam and I've heard Ponzi. I don't know what I'm
I
hearing.
don't know.
All right. Well, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 7, application for a special retail malt beverage retailer's license and special retail wine license to the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce for the period of 4 p.m. Friday, July 15th of 2016 until 10 p.m. Saturday, July the 16th, 2016. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anyone wants to speak in favor of or against this. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mike, second by Dan. Any questions on this one? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Very nice. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Number 8, proposed lease agreement with Good Enterprises LLC for city-owned land around the Casino Speedway. And this is, of course, from the airport. If you want to come on up, Todd, I will open up the public hearing. If there's anyone wants to speak in favor of or against this, your opportunity. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by, was it John? John, a second by Mike. Any questions that you have for Todd here, or he can kind of explain what's going on in the first place, if you would?
The racetrack was sold is the main reason we're just revamping this lease for Mr. Good.
So this does replace an existing lease, Todd?
Yes.
Uh,
Okay.
Are there any changes? Started reading through it, and I would have had to go out and get the other ones, so I thought I'd rather ask you. Is there any significant changes?
I'll defer my questions to the attorney.
No, basically, originally it was, what is it, Benson to Brink, and then Brink to Good? And so we were trying to clean it up and just start fresh with a new lease. The pay structure for them, for this first 10-year term, keeps his rent the same for the first 2 years, because had he gotten an assignment, that's how it would have run. And then the remaining 8 years of the first term, the rent will go up. And the rent structure is still the same. So it was basically just starting fresh.
So we're resetting the 10-year term though, but
No.
It's still a 10-year term. It's just his increase in rent doesn't happen. It happens 2 years into his first term rather than waiting 10 years.
Because if it would have just transferred from Brink to Good, it would have been up in 2 years.
right.
So we left it that way. It's going to go up in 2 years, or it may go up in 2 years, I should say.
At the end of the first.
And then we took out some things that were in the initial lease, because at that time they were going to construct things, and the fence hadn't been built yet. I mean, because it was old. It was way back with the initial lease. So we took that language out.
50 years or something like that?
Yeah, and we can't do that
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, that's what I thought. So that was another reason to clean it up. I mean,
Right.
that's,
Right.
yeah. And Mayor, I will recuse myself from this vote when it comes time for voting for conflict of interest, so.
Okay, any other questions for Todd? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Todd. Number 9, first reading of ordinance number 1608, amending section 3.0109, regulating the keeping of certain animals within and for the city of Watertown. This is a first reading only. I would like to, Shane or Attorney Lisa, if you want to maybe mention what happened, what the changes are, or Beth, if you wanted to address it, somebody needs to kind of look at this and give us just a little update on why this came about and what's going on.
I would defer to Beth because she's participated with the Animal Control Board. Although I do realize that I believe it was last summer, there was an issue with a raccoon.
Yeah. And Dr. Reeb, the president of the Animal Control Board, is here as well. Are you still here, Mark? Yeah. Okay. I couldn't see you behind the monitor. Yes, this was one of the things where we had a situation where we had some ambiguity in the language in terms of what animal could be kept and what animal could be kept via by a special permit of the Animal Control Board. And in looking at the actual practice, the Animal Control Board had never in the history that we could find issued a permit for any of these exotic animals. And as we continued to do the research and looked at other cities' ordinances, some of them were laboriously tedious to go through, but we found that we were consistent with a lot of the other communities. The other thing was, as we looked at some of these animals and researched them, Dan Miller is also on our board, and he has a lot of knowledge of animals. Another animal owner and citizen, Chrisma, she also has a lot of knowledge of animal behavior. We found that the animals that we are looking at excluding are all potentially extremely dangerous to humans. And rather than go through a long laundry list of individual animals, some of which we found were extinct on some of the community's lists, it was a true story. And we had to look up what an aardwolf was. But anyway, this reflects, I believe, a good, workable ordinance that the animal control officer also agreed was something that he could enforce. And it also reflects a statement in regards to non-human primates, which the state of South Dakota is encouraging all the communities to include in their ordinances. So, Mark, is there anything I missed? Okay. So that's the kind of the history and where we got to where we are now.
Beth,
So-
I have a question for you after reading this thing. It does say that the animal would be removed. Is there an intent for any type of ramifications for somebody that violates this ordinance? Or are they just going to take away the animal?
I think it depends on, I think at this point, the way the ordinance reads to me is that they would impound the animal and remove it.
So this is only going to happen if somebody finds out about it.
Right.
There's no consequence for anybody that violates this ordinance.
Well, they lose
Other
their
than losing their pet.
their critter, yeah. I think that there's probably some allowance in ordinance that we don't have, and Lisa, maybe you can help me, or Tim or somebody. There's probably we saw some cross ordinances in some of the other health rules in some of those areas where there was an allowance for fining and potential consequence for creating a dangerous situation, if you want to call it that.
Tim, can you come up here and kind of fill us in if there's a charge or anything, any kind of a...
I don't think there's any specific charge. It's not a petty offense or a class 2 misdemeanor, as most ordinances would be. It just gives us authority to seize the animal. That would be a discussion for the council if you want to add a level fine to it.
You know, I think if you got dangerous animals, that's one of the objectives. My assumption is of this ordinance, then I think we want to discourage folks from doing that.
Absolutely agree.
And in my opinion, there ought to be some sort of ramifications for somebody that does that. So they know up front that if they do this, they're going to get a ticket, a fine, whatever the case may be.
Typically, a dog at large, for instance, that's a $114 fine. So if you're looking for a ballpark, that would be a good starting point.
I've got a couple questions. I appreciate the conciseness and the brevity of this compared to some of the other cities, but I've got a question. I mean, how do we necessarily define dangerous? I mean, who makes that determination? I mean, for example, a pit bull, for example, is a dog breed. I mean, is that inherently a dangerous animal, or who makes that determination?
When it comes to a vicious dog, that would be it would be deemed vicious by law enforcement, and then that would set off a system of hearings that they could appeal it to the Animal Control Board, and then we would present both sides, and the Animal Control Board would either say yes, the dog's vicious, or no, and then sets the parameters. As far as specific animals, that's just based on research, I'm assuming.
Maybe you answered my second question. So is there recourse to an animal owner that has had their pet placed under suspicion as being dangerous?
Yes. So there's putting a muzzle on, a shorter 6-foot leash, a higher fence. All those are set forth by the Animal Control Board up to euthanization.
And they also have to come in front of the board.
That's correct.
Yes.
And those only involve domestic pets, such as, and primarily dogs is what we're looking at. We haven't had a lot of vicious cat attacks lately, but that would be with dogs. The purpose of this, as we were doing our research, for example, a skunk is the most dangerous, or a raccoon, I should say, is one of the most dangerous animals in terms of relations to rabies, in the sense that they can carry the active rabies virus for, Mark, is it over a year or up to a year? Yeah, they can carry it for a long period of time without showing any symptoms, but can still be able to transmit it. And so those were the kind of things we looked at when we chose these. And skunks right now, according to Chris, if they come into town, we just automatically assume they're rabid if they come in during the day and remove them. And so the idea is exotics and venomous, things that would cause harm to humans, that they might not even know where they're coming from, that kind of thing. So this addresses specifically non-pet, non-dogs, I should say non-dogs and cats. If you look at it, it says regulation on the keeping of certain animals, and we struck other than dogs. That's the way it always was written before.
But then by default, we're including dogs in this ordinance.
No, we're not.
Other than dogs.
Yeah. Excluding it. Right in there it says. So we're,
I think on the very top, it says regulations of the keeping of certain animals other than dogs. Dogs are actually in another entire ordinance itself.
right.
And we're not really working on that particular ordinance.
No, this is specific, I'm sorry,
Well,
Steve.
this is a good timing too, because we have all these little, little raccoons running around and little skunks around, and they look like real friendly pets, and we don't really want those. So it's good timing. I think this is real good.
The fine, just so you know, is $200.
It is $200.
Yeah,
Okay.
the fine is $200.
Beth,
I thought there was something relative to it. Did you hear that, Bruce? Are you guys finished? Okay, $200.
We have been corrected.
Beth, I got a question, or Mark or whomever here, but if so I know I can't have a skunk or a fox or a raccoon or an exotic animal as far as a primate. But when we went through this a year ago or whatever it was, then there a lot of these questions get thrown out. Can I have a ferret?
Yes.
Can I have a boa constrictor that's 15 feet long? I mean, these things happen where people do
Right.
have these. Matter of fact,
Well-
and I won't mention any names, but somebody's kid had one of these things and it got out, and it was a
Yeah.
great big snake.
Right. No.
It may not be venomous, but it's going to squeeze the heck out of you.
We looked at those kinds of things, and boas and boa constrictors and ferrets and some of those others are all considered to be, I don't want to say typical, but it's not acceptable. It's not uncommon for those to be, and the exposure to the public by those animals is very minimal. I mean, you're not likely to have your boa constrictor out for a walk or, things like that. Some do, I suppose, but it's not venomous, so you can't just walk by it and have anybody, have it bite you on the shoulder. I might be deflating into Mark's territory here, but I want to try the best I can.
You said the max fine is 200, but the judges have set it at 110, correct? That's what we show.
Correct, and then there's also jail time. Believe it or not, they have
Yeah,
it in
it's
there.
up to 30 days in jail, so
Yep.
it's a class 2 misdemeanor.
Mhm.
All right, well, thank you very much, appreciate it.
I want to thank Beth and whoever else had their hand in it. This does take away the ambiguousness of the ordinance, and it's going to make our job much easier. So, thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Mark.
There was a lot of work. Like I said, we took the opportunity to read for you guys all those tedious, long ordinances from some of the other cities, and just because we needed to do it, and this is what we came up with.
Sounds good. Okay, we're going to move on. Number 10, first reading of ordinance number 1611, amending the section 6.0501 of the revised ordinance of the City of Watertown regarding veterans' burial plots within Mount Hope Cemetery. And Shane, do you want to explain to us what's going on?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. City staff had been informed over the winter that we were running out of burial plots for veterans. And so we started to research the area in the cemetery that contains veterans. And if Ray would put my screen up on the board. Okay, so the area in blue has been the ongoing area for the veterans plots. And essentially, last fall, we were down to less than 6, I believe. And so it became evident that we needed to consider the new area. The immediate new area is this box in green. That will provide 72 additional burial plots for veterans. And then we wanted to have a plan going forward beyond this revision, and that is the box in red is an area that we hope to hold aside for future expansions to the veteran burial plots. So with that, we can go back to the ordinance and review that. Basically, we struck out the previous description of land defining the veterans plots in the cemetery and replaced it with the language immediate below it. And it's very tedious to read a description of this nature, so I'll just leave it at that. And
Shane, can I ask a question? Why is this an ordinance issue and not a cemetery management issue?
To be honest with you, I don't have the history of that. It's an ordinance, and when we change burial plots, we need to change the ordinance. So we're just going through the motions.
Is this typical in towns? Or is this, we've got something and it
been-
seems odd to me that it's not
Yeah.
just a cemetery management issue and you allocate the space you want towards what you want?
I think this is
this
only
case.
the second or third amendment since World War I, so. Anyway, it's a part of our ordinance, and we adapted the language accordingly.
Whatever the history there, as a veteran, I do appreciate or applaud the consideration of this, and hope we can move forward on it in the future.
Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I do want to also just, this isn't really on the agenda, but I wanted to throw this out. It kind of flows right in with the cemeteries. A monument such as this one that you see right now is not legal in our cemetery. The way if you read the ordinance the way it reads, this is called a bench monument, and a bench monument is not actually legal in our cemetery. This is up at is it St. Mary's over here by the highway, St. Mary's Cemetery. This one is up there. There's numerous of them. We don't need to make a ordinance change or anything. I think we just need everybody to understand that we're going to start allowing this. We do not consider this a bench per se. A bench is something that you sit down and rest your back is what we would consider. People won't sit on this. So just so you know, we're going to start allowing something like this up there also. Fair
Steve,
enough?
why was it illegal? Is there a safety
Well,
hazard when you're mowing?
No. What they did was they do not want benches out there in front of the grave site, and they considered this, since it had a flat tabletop, a bench. Yeah.
It was basically a play on terms. Your ordinance says that benches aren't allowed, but the way that the monument place classifies this monument is a bench monument.
Right.
So
I don't see any issue on it why we wouldn't allow that. I think it looks great. And that, again, hasn't been changed since, what did you say, Lisa, 1965 on that one?
Correct.
Yeah. Lots has changed since then. Okay? Thanks, Ray.
Didn't we just have a change that we've allowed some other type of materials to be
We
used?
did. Yes, yep, and that's going well. I would agree with Mike, I think that's kind of something that can be changed right at the cemetery rather than going through a council level. But number 11, consideration of application for a sidewalk cafe for the Watertown Brewing Company. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion on this. Motion by Mike, second by Beth. This here is, just to give you a little update, this is at the Brewing Company. They're looking at having sidewalk cafe 4 to 11 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday. And I see we have representation here tonight. So if there's any questions that you want to ask, now is your opportunity. Anybody have any questions on this?
I
think
guess
you're-
I do. Maybe I haven't read this well enough, but my question is,
Christine, if you want to get up to the podium then.
will there be some sort of fencing that you're planning, like some portable fencing that you'd put? Okay, and then there'd be sufficient room for people to walk by. Okay, that's all I wanted.
And actually, we've decided to extend our Friday and Saturday hours until midnight since I turned this in. So it would be till midnight, although I don't know that
No, that'll
anyone
be okay.
would want to sit
Yeah.
outside at midnight, but.
I think most of them have kind of looked at 11 o'clock. We've been kind of consistent with 11,
Okay.
but that's a decision that you folks have to make.
Well, I think part of that is we do have residents that live downtown, and that's why we've tried to limit it to 11. One thing I would ask, and it's I see a few of them, and I think it's more the patrons than it is the business owners, where the rope's getting pushed out to the edge. I've seen one not too long ago where they were having a beanbag deal, and it was all the way out the edge of the sidewalk, just to try to get people to try to police it yourself a little bit and try to be respectful for everybody else. And like I say, I don't think it was proprietors. I think it was more the patrons that did it. So,
And
Tim, you look like you had a quizzical look on your face.
Well, we can do 11.
yeah, it's easier to police that way. I mean,
We can haul the tables in at 11. And the people with them.
Sounds good.
Very good
11
idea.
o'clock. We'll stick with 11 then. We all okay with that? Any other questions for Christine?
Thanks, Christine.
All right. If no more questions, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank
Mayor,
you for
Mayor,
being
can we
here.
come back to the topic just for a second? The one thing I have noticed, I think our standards for what we use for the barrier separation and the cleanliness outside is way too low. The sidewalks look terrible. They get stuff spilt all over them. The sidewalks aren't washed. There's cigarette butts all over. We use a rope. It looks like heck. If we're going to have this, I would just as soon that we reestablish a higher standard for what we are defining as the barrier than a stick with a rope on it that can be pushed all over the place.
I saw one that looked like police
It
tape.
looks terrible, and I don't think that's what our intention is to have downtown.
I agree, and I think that like for this particular business and some others I can think of in town, I absolutely have no doubt that they'll be nice, and we do have some that exist that are very nice, and we do have some that have used industrial materials to create their barriers and things like that. So I agree with Mike that it would be nice to at least have some minimum standard as to what constitutes material for a barrier. Those kinds of things would really help a lot. And it would help the people applying for these cafes. And I like the idea of having sidewalk cafes, but I'd also like them to look really nice, so.
would that be something for building services just to kind of come up with some guidelines?
So you won't have like crime scene tape across there?
I will see what I can do about that.
Only on Halloween, right?
Little spray paint on the ground of that guy laying there. Tim can help you out with that. Yeah. Okay, Tim? Thanks, Christine. We'll look forward to seeing that. I think it'll be very nice. Congratulations, John, on your new restaurant down there. I think it's great. It's going well. Thank you.
Just so I can, Christine, the days are the same though, staying at 11? Okay, because you didn't have a change in any of that.
Actually, right now, we're only open Wednesday through Saturday, but I put Tuesday on there to cover us in case we decided to do Tuesday.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. No, you got to stay for the next 3 or 4 since you've stayed this long. No, it's okay. Yeah, yeah. Number 12, authorization for the mayor to sign a grant application for the airport runway project. Todd, you're here. Give us a little update on this.
Yes, the feds called us last week, a couple of weeks ago actually, gave us an inkling that we'd get approved for a grant if we got it in by July 1st. So we're just trying to get this moving for the runway project next year.
Perfect. So what I'll do, Todd, is I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion on this.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Don. Have you got questions for Todd on this runway project? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Todd. Number 13, authorization for the airport to advertise for bids for the runway project. What I will do is I will look for a motion and a second for discussion on this. Motion by Beth, second by Mike. And Todd, go ahead and fill us in on this one, then we'll look for questions.
Yep. So we're going to, if you guys approve this, we're going to go out for bids probably later this week. We're going to give them ample amount of time to bid. We're going to close the bids, I believe, the last day of June, so we can review the bids before July 1st. I'm sorry, we're going to close the bids a week before the end of June, so we have time to open the bids and review them and get it back to the feds.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Or should we have him repeat it?
No, it probably pertains, how's this gonna affect the new airline when we start doing that? Because it didn't seem like the last time, was that one of the issues or excuses why flights were canceled and so on?
Correct. And right, so the last runway we did was our primary runway, or runway 1735 is our instrument landing system, and they definitely need that one. This one's our secondary runway, going east to west, and it's not critical.
Okay, so I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Todd, can you just give us, I know it's just a little update on what's going on, what's transpired with our new essential air service?
Yeah, we got the contract awarded, I believe, last Friday from the DOT. So ADI is the new airline for Watertown and Pier. They will be starting August 1st. I do have a meeting with them tomorrow at 12:30, a conference call. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to try and meet up face-to-face with them. We're going to work through marketing and ticket prices and start dates, all that fun stuff.
I could ask the question right off, when will we be able to start booking flights?
That's what I will figure out tomorrow. We're hoping as soon as possible to get it online, so we have at least a month and a half of ticket sales before that first flight.
But the contract itself actually for the EAS starts August 1st.
Correct. So if they don't start flying August 1st, they won't get paid. So that's how that works.
Todd, have they started any staff searching at this point in time for
that is
like support staff, that kind of thing?
Right. That is what we're going to go over tomorrow. They're going to ask for a recommendation for staffing.
When will TSA start coming back in and get set up?
They're already training currently, and they're hiring 3 people at the moment, 3 males for Watertown, and they will have them fully trained by August 1. I was in contact with TSA last Thursday, Friday.
Very nice. Any other questions on the airline?
Do they still have all their inter-airline agreements that they talked about to begin with? I heard rumor on the street that
That's an
some of those
interesting
don't
question,
exist.
Randy. They were working with Silver Airlines, I believe was the name of it. And for some unknown reason, ADI decided to bid against Silver Airlines. Silver Airlines kind of got a little bit ticked off on it, decided to pull that out for their ticketing. So what ADI did is they actually went in turn and talked to Great Lakes Aviation. They can still use their ticketing process through Great Lakes. So when you go to Expedia or to a travel agent or anything, they'll go to ADI, but when it's printed, it'll come through as Great Lakes Airlines and ADI. together on that.
Operated by ADI, correct?
Yes. So it's really, Great Lakes has absolutely nothing to do with ADI. I want to reiterate that. They have nothing to do with ADI except for the ticketing agent. And the ticketing process was not our problem. We could get tickets all the time. They wouldn't fly in.
Right.
So we'll be good as gold. And they're still working on it. They're still working on their own
Reservation.
ticketing. Yeah.
Yep.
But we will still have connectivity like they had said with the larger airlines, correct?
That is a question I'm going to ask tomorrow.
I mean, that was a big
But as
deal.
far as I understand, Great Lakes does have a good interline agreement system set up in place.
Because that's what we were told, the three majors that they were going to
Correct.
have connect, yeah.
And Great Lakes does have the interline agreements with the three majors.
Now I was told we would be able to check our baggage here and not have to touch it again.
That's still the same. if
That's
they
still
have
the same.
Yes.
Okay, that's what.
Yes. I don't know how much of this system they're going to turn on for ADI right away. I'm guessing that they would turn on United all the way. They might hold back on Delta as far as the code share portion of it, where you can go to Delta's website or all of that stuff. Due to the fact that there's not a whole lot of Delta presence in Denver, but United would be huge for us.
Well, it's exciting. I want to thank you for all the work you've done on that, and then we'll know more tomorrow and keep us informed, if you will. Okay, so we're good to go. We have to start now on number 14, consideration of airport bids. The bids received for the heat, electrical, and insulation work for the airport shop building. If you remember right, this is the building that you got from Worthington?
Dakota Tube.
Dakota Tube, I'm sorry, Dakota Tube. That building was moved over, and now you just need to go out. You're looking for bids, and you received those bids, am I correct?
That's correct.
So why don't you go ahead and show it to us, and then we'll go further on that.
Sure. I did them two separate bids due to the fact that we ran into the $50,000 bid law. We found out later after the fact that we should go out for bid for this, so we did. So I bid this in two separate bid columns. The heat, electrical, and insulation on the first bid. So I guess if you don't want to make a decision on that one first.
No,
Ken?
we will.
Okay,
you
and
go
then
ahead
go
and
down
explain
to the next one, please. And then the second bid is the concrete vestibule and excavation work. And then we also got an alternate bid because I wasn't sure on how the utilities and everything worked out there. So we got an alternate bid on the connecting the floor drain to the manhole. We did find a manhole. We worked through with utilities and the other departments, and we came up with this alternate bid for the contractors to bid on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, Todd, is I will go ahead and get a motion in a second for discussion on your first bid for the heat, electrical, and insulation work. And then you'll give us your recommendation which one to go with.
Sure.
So move.
So I've got a bid, or okay, I have a bid. Dan and Bruce? Okay, so we got Dan and Bruce on that. And what is your recommendation to us here, Tom?
The recommendation, I did go through all three contractors. There was quite a bit of price difference, so I did spend a lot of time on this. But Neal Construction did meet all of our standards, so I would recommend Neal Construction.
Any questions, you guys?
Was there any engineers' estimates on any of this, or too small a project, or?
Too small.
That's like that, so.
Okay, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And then we'll go to the second one. I'm going to look for a motion in a second for discussion on that. Motion by John, second by Brad. And then if you'll give us your recommendation on these bids here.
Sure. I did the same as well for these. There was a bit of a price difference, so I did go through all three bids very thoroughly, and Neal Construction did meet the specs that we had planned for this, including the alternate. So I would recommend Neal Construction.
With alternate.
With the alternate.
Any questions on that, you guys?
This is just for a drain? There's no bathroom or anything in part of this then, or?
Correct, just a floor drain. What we're going to do is we're going to tie the two buildings together with the vestibule, so we can use the bathroom that we already have in the other shop. Keeps the price down.
Todd, will this be all the work that needs to be done on this building then? So when we get done with these two, plus the purchase of the building and the moving of the building, that's our total cost? Or is there gonna be additional things that are coming our way related to this building?
No. As far as the building construction, getting it to final stage, this will do it.
Okay, that's-
Now, if we're gonna add hose reels, if we're gonna add, other stuff inside the building,
Right, that'd
that's
be
covered by
separate issue,
equipment.
right.
That's equipment maintenance and,
Yep.
and building maintenance.
We already approved the concrete work and stuff before, hadn't we?
We didn't. You guys will have to approve all this. We just approved the moving of the building and the foundation footings.
That's
So this was, this is what, I maybe,
Yeah, we
Shelley
just
can
had to
speak
finish
on
this
this.
up, so we have the building's there and everything is
Correct.
good to go. We just need to get the concrete work done now on the footings, of course, were all in place and everything. This is the flooring.
Correct.
Did this all fit into then, when it's all said and done? I think we talked, and I don't recall what the number is, we felt the gross number was to buy it, move it, get it through this point. Does this all fall within what we talked about?
No.
Is it lower?
No, it's not.
I was hoping it was lower, but, okay, so how much more are we talking about than what we had talked in the previous meetings?
It was $77,000 total is what we had. So I believe we're at 36,000, and then the other one was roughly 30. So you're at 66,000 for this. We're about 35,000 over.
And we took that from where?
Go ahead and explain the first part of it, where the first dollars came from.
The first dollars
The
came from the
75.
sale of the
Oh, yeah.
of the Airco 2 building. So the 77,000 is basically free. So we'd be spending another, let's say, 40,000 to complete this building.
40?
Roughly 40, 60. Yeah.
Yeah.
14,000 to buy it, 19,000 to move it, and yeah, we were at 49,000 plus 60. Yeah, it's roughly 40,000 more.
Okay, so as we approve this tonight, do we need to designate where those additional funds are coming from? Or you got that covered, Shelley? Or
Well, if you want to designate it somewhere other than getting an additional transfer from the second penny, because the second penny sales tax is what covers the CIP portion of the airport, and anything that's over and above what you approved in 2016, which this would be, I would just, at the end of the year, ask for a supplement transfer from the second penny. So unless you want it to come from somewhere different, that's the route I would take.
It's 36,000 total, more.
Do the math for me again. I was just trying to figure this out. You had 14 for the
49 plus 60.
No, let's go back. Let's start from the beginning. 14, you said 14.
14
and
to move it,
18.
19 to
I'm trying to get my, okay. So if I got
14 to buy the building.
14
14 to buy the building.
and 19
19 to move it.
and 29
Yep.
and 35.
And 35, and then the footings and foundations. The building price, the moving of the building,
Okay,
and
so
the
we got into
footings
that.
equaled $49,000. So I took 49,000 plus 35,000 plus
Okay.
30,000.
I'm picking it up there. Very good.
Sorry.
Any other questions? It'd be a nice building once we're done, right?
It will be beautiful.
Yeah, it'll be very nice.
Yeah, and we
That's-
didn't have it. We didn't have the extra budgeted for it, and I would have spent the 77,000, and we'd have been okay. The hitch was the $50,000 bid law, and since we have to go out for bids anyways, that's why I did this in two separate bids.
Right.
Okay, so I can have the concrete, the vestibule, and the excavation done, and you guys don't have to put any money into the airport. As far as the 77,000 will cover all that. Now, with the other, the heat and the electrical, since we're going out for bids, I just figured that we'd get a separate bid for that.
Right.
God, didn't you have some stuff set aside in long-term CIP for?
Yes.
And what was that amount?
$1 million.
Okay, that's gonna take care of a lot of that.
Yes.
And is this going to house the airplane for ADI? Is that what your thought is?
No.
No.
This is for our snow equipment, for the stone hanger. Our stone hanger's a cold storage. The floor's pretty beat up in it. gonna cost a lot of money, and it's under the historical site, I believe, so.
Now, what's ever gonna happen to that?
All right, let's move on here, and I'm going to look for council action on that. Am I right? We don't have, okay, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Mayor, should we designate the funds to come out of the, Shelley, how you want to do that? We just approved
Is
something
that
that we don't have
automatic,
funding for.
unless we say otherwise? Is that?
At the end of the year, I'll ask for an additional transfer supplement, but it's going to come from the second penny.
Right.
Unless right now you guys want to say something
Okay,
different.
But it doesn't need to be, we can leave that alone as far as these two motions and approvals.
Right,
And it'll
right.
just automatically come as a supplement.
No, come at the end of the year
Right.
when we do our ordinance.
When you do the
Supplemental
supplemental.
ordinance, yep,
Right.
that's when it'll
Okay.
come.
Shelley, what would our options be outside of that if we wanted to do something different tonight?
You could have it come from the contingency fund, you could have it come from the general fund.
From your expertise, what would be the best route for us to go with this?
To be consistent, I would take it from the second penny sales tax, since that's kind of what covers all the capital costs. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. 14C, Strong Town Engagement Agreement. What I'm looking for here is that we bring Strong Town to the council meeting on June the 20th. They're going to be here for the work session. And what they need, this is all about the charrette that was happened. Isn't that correct, Beth? And then these folks here will talk about the two-way streets and what we would expect.
Yeah, it actually is a little bit broader in scope in that he goes around and talks about the principles of renovating or revitalizing or vitalizing urban or downtown areas, things like that. And yes, this did come up from the charrette in the sense that he was a participant in it. We Skyped him in, and it was amazing insight, and we really felt that it would be beneficial for the entire council to hear that, because it talked about development, it talked about just good practices that cities should adopt to have a good, strong, solid downtown. Don't you think,
And
Randy? I mean,
it's kind of a next step onto the, it kind of gives us direction in the next step of all the information that we've got from the charrette, and kind of a good starting point. When we Skyped him in, I mean, it was very, 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 very interesting, and I think it's going to be very instrumental in how we move forward with this project, so.
Right. What I would look for, guys, is a motion and a second. I think in the motion, I'd like to see where the dollars are going to come from. My understanding is we can use the urban renewal dollars for this, since it is an uptown project. I would like that motion.
I would make that motion to bring in Strong Towns with the funds coming from the urban renewal.
Okay, so I have a motion by Randy. Second by Beth. Now, is there any other questions on this?
Is it our intention that this gentleman will be here for our work session?
That is correct.
We're paying him, what, $2,500 to come here, correct? And plus his expenses. But now we're going to limit ourselves to about an hour to an hour and a half. It
It will be an hour
almost
and a half.
seems like we,
The problem we ran into, Mike, is that the 20th was the only day he could come. I actually had another gentleman that is, to Market Watertown in that hour and a half slate. So I had to move that person into the council agenda. So it doesn't matter to me which way you want it. If you want to have, maybe we want to start earlier or something.
that's what I said, I think to go to
Does it
either
need
the
it?
same day or the same time frame would be, if we're going to get him here, let's use the heck out of him, right? And we don't know how many people we're going to have here that are going to want to listen and ask questions. I think we need to probably, if that's the case, Steve, schedule-wise, then we got to move it, the start up earlier if at all possible, I think.
Do you think another hour would be suffice if we started at, say, 4:30?
yeah, 4:30 or 5 at the latest. I agree. I mean, I had even talked about possibility of bringing him in on another day just to be able to have enough time, but this seems to be a good time in the sense that we don't have to try to, make another meeting and things like that for ourselves, but, yeah, if we're gonna get him here, I'd like to have us utilize him for the longest period of time that we can. I anticipate a full gallery, and I would expect that there would be a lot of questions. So I obviously would go along with however long you guys would want him here. I think Randy would agree that he could probably help us for 6 hours if we wanted, but anyway.
Now, with his fee, he don't designate an amount of time.
No, this
He
is,
does.
get him here and talk, and I asked them too, is it amount of time, or is it limited to the number of people, and the answer to both was no. So we might as well get our money's worth, I guess, is what I'm saying.
And
I
the
like
thing
that-
about having it during the work session is that we are all here. To get a
Right.
time that we can basically all be here to listen to, their presentation, it's hard to do.
One of the things is I talked to Nancy and Sarah today about this. One of the things I mentioned, if we're expecting a ton of people, we could start at 4 o'clock and be done by 6:30 and have it probably out to the event center. With all the seating, it seats up to 300 people. You really have a big group out there. I don't know if, and then come back here. Or we could hold our council meeting out there that evening.
Yeah,
Doesn't
we could
matter.
just, that was an original thought that I had expressed to Steve too, is let's take advantage of him and the people who will come and take one of the biggest, what a big venue would be that we could use. I'd be okay with the Heritage Center and start early.
Ray, you can get it on video out there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Everybody okay with that? I think it's a good idea.
From our prior discussion, are we expecting to have this survey taken care of by then, or?
I don't know if 2 weeks is quick. Is that too quick?
The survey part of it, yes. I was gonna make the recommendation, if we're gonna have him here the entire day, would it be beneficial, and we're encouraging downtown business owners to be involved, to see if Harry's or somebody like that would maybe host lunch and have that time for downtown business owners, so they have 2 opportunities if they can't come at 4 o'clock because of staffing. Maybe he would do a presentation at noon, and we could try to get those folks there, just Dutch treat, come buy your lunch and listen to him then.
Do we know if he can come that early? I think he was anticipating late, but we could, doesn't hurt to ask.
I think you could talk to him and get him
Yeah.
here. I'm sure he'll be here.
We'd be happy to coordinate that, but sometimes with
Yeah.
those, if they're a single proprietor in their business, it's tough for them to get away one time or the other. So if we offer a couple options,
That's
then
a good
maybe we
idea.
could get more people
Because,
involved.
yeah, he does seminars to many, many, many cities, large and small. So I think it would be very good. So let's shoot for that. What do you guys say, okay?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. 4 o'clock, out to the event center, and we'll just carry through with our council agenda out there.
So then it would be the expectation the survey would come after this then?
I think
Okay.
that would be the best, because I think people would be very well educated by then, and then they could form their opinion one way or the other. So do you want me to follow up with everybody about what time he would be here in town, or?
Yeah, find out, make sure he can be here. As long as we got him here at 4 o'clock at the event center, I'm good. So what I would look for is council action on this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're gonna go with it, gonna happen like that, and then if you find something different, let us know, and we'll get it changed. Whatever, yeah. Okay. Number 15, consideration of bids received for the South Broadway Bridge Rehab Project. Shane, that's yours, I believe.
All right, Ray, can you put my screen on? Thank you. On May 26th, city opened bids for this project. This is not a total bridge reconstruction project anymore. That was on the original DOT schedule to be a complete replacement, but it's been downsized to a rehabilitation, which means that they'll take off the deck pieces and rebuild a new deck over the existing abutments and piers. So we're just replacing the upper portion of the bridge at this point. And with that, the 4 bids, the low bid was submitted by Knowles Dragline and Construction of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The amount of their bid was $398,914.90. This was approximately 8% above the engineer's estimate, which was $368,900. Just to give you an idea what the other bid ranges were. The second bid was 417,000, and with a high bid of 521,000. So there's a nice little grouping of bids, all of them slightly above the engineer's estimate, which wasn't completely unexpected because typically we're bidding a whole bridge, not a rehabilitation, so that skewed the estimate just a little bit. But anyway, we discussed it with all the partners. GLE is on board with this project going forward at this current bid price, and the engineer recommended award as well. So with that, staff also recommends award to Knowles Dragline and Construction Inc.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll look for a motion and a second for any more discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Glenn, second by Bruce. Any other questions that we have for Shane on this? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, and that was for the low bid for that. What did you call the name?
Knowles Dragline and Construction
Okay.
Incorporated.
All right. Thank you, Shane. Any old business that you need to discuss? Hearing none, I will move on to new business. I do have something here I'd like to read. This came from the Government Finance Officers Association out of Chicago, Illinois. It was addressed to the Honorable Steve Thorson. Dear Mayor Thorson, I am pleased to notify you that City of Watertown, South Dakota has received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the current budget from the Government Finance Officers Association, and they use the acronyms GFOA. This award is the highest form of recognition in governmental budgeting and represents a significant achievement by your organization. When a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award is granted to an entity, a certificate of recognition for budget presentation is also presented to the individual or department designated as being primarily responsible for its having achieved this award. This has been presented to the Finance Office with Shelley Evers. We hope you will arrange for a formal presentation. Shelley, I wish I had the award in my hand, but congratulations on getting that. It's wonderful to get this recognition for your office.
Well, if anybody says that we are not all for open government, see, the awards as you walk into City Hall will tell you that we're all about open government, and what I know, you guys know. So there's two really great documents that everybody should read.
Thanks, Shelley. Let me see if I got anything else in my little packet here that I need to get out here right away.
I got a couple items, Mayor.
Okay.
If they'll fit in right now.
Go ahead.
One of my constituents, Don Meyer, was concerned about the flowers on 81 and kind of was looking for an update on what's going on with the flowers.
Is that the Don Meyer from Sharp Chevrolet?
That is the Don Meyer, yes.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. You said Don?
Meyer, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, Don, let me just kind of let you know what's going on. We had some issues with the rototilling of the flower beds, I guess you would call it. It didn't really turn out the way they wanted it, so they went through and rototilled again. Still didn't turn out exactly the way they wanted, so they decided to plant the flowers, and as they were going through, they would pull the weeds out with the volunteers. There wasn't enough volunteers over the weekend to get it done, so I believe it's this week, Cornerstone Church and the City of Watertown will be planting the rest of the flowers. So Don, rest assured, they will get planted. We
Thank
love
you, Mayor.
flowers.
And that's good, because I was a greeter at church on Sunday, and you do not know how many people wanted to know how their flowers were going to be on 81.
Yeah, some people thought I didn't like flowers like Mike doesn't like otters and stuff. I like flowers, and you like otters. Okay, so we're good with that.
I do have one other question, Mayor,
Okay.
on a more serious note. Not that those flowers aren't serious.
Pretty darn serious.
Because they are. But that is the sign ordinance. My understanding, I had a conversation with Luke from First District, and he said that they believe they've got an ordinance penned. When are we gonna when are we gonna move along with this process? When are we gonna get a meeting together so that we
Right.
can review that?
And I might just explain, at that particular time, Tim Lallam was actually handling the sign ordinance for us, along with First District. As you remember, Tim left our office, it kind of left us hanging on a number of different areas. But at this particular time, there is a new gentleman hired for that position. He just started today. I would assume that First District, Luke and Todd will be in here just shortly, the next couple of weeks, and we'll get that wrapped up. We got to get something done. And just so you also know, I believe it is it Wednesday, Thursday, we're having a meeting. Wednesday, we're having a meeting on the ordinance for parking RVs and things at the lake, just so people understand that is also in the works, and we'll be working on that. The really hard part of the parking things at the lake is that the front yard is the backyard and the backyard's the front yard. So what you're seeing is backyard when you drive around the lake. So it is difficult, but that is going to be worked on extremely hard here in this next couple weeks.
Mayor, something else regarding the lake. It just wasn't clear. I think it was clear, but people forgot or something. And I had a few comments about all the garbage cans that were put out Tuesday night, thinking they were going to be picked up on Wednesday, and even though they'd been picked up the previous Friday. So I don't know how we remind people the
Yeah.
next time we have that, because out at the lake it was, and then of course it had to blow 50 miles an hour every day, and so the garbage cans tipped over, and we kind of have a mess out there because people just didn't remember, or
Right.
the fact that it was supposed to have been Wednesday, and they thought it was Wednesday pickup.
Used to be Wednesday, now
it's
the Friday
before. And so just as a reminder, I don't know if we do anything.
Well,
but-
what we did, just so you have an idea, we did put flyers in every utility bill. It was told, to be prepared for this. On the 4th of July, it's going to be coming up also. So on the 4th, which is a Monday, they have to have their garbage out on Friday. It does create 2 additional days of worth of garbage, so they have to be aware of that. So their garbage will be picked up on Friday, and it will not be picked up until the following Monday, a week from the 4th of July. So it'd be the 11th. So there will be, actually what's happening is that there's 11 days of garbage in the garbage can versus 9 days in the garbage can. So it's 2 additional days.
That's a
And
good
that
one.
was in the southwest part of town also. It was pretty adamant that people didn't really pick up on that Friday before.
Mayor, I've got one issue. I brought it up when the golf season opened here this spring, but now I had somebody that lives along South Lake Drive bring it to my attention. That's golf carts out there. The specific issue last week was a couple kids racing golf carts along South Lake Drive, and that was the concern that I expressed a couple months ago out at Summerwood around the golf course along South Lake Drive. We got a lot of small kids operating these golf carts that don't respect the traffic rules out there, and somebody is going to get hurt or killed out there eventually.
I would relay this to Tim. Maybe you can tell us how old are you supposed to be to drive those golf carts on the highway? And
Yep, it's 16, and you have to have a driver's license. So it's similar to the motorcycle or moped, anything under 49 cc's ordinance. And we are aware of those complaints and are actively patrolling and looking for those violations. So.
I don't really think that's the only part of town. I mean, I think every part of town has an issue with somebody driving some type of vehicle. I mean, I see a couple kids that live right down the street from me
Golf
that are
carts
about.
have to be a direct route from home to the golf course and back. It's not a recreational vehicle to going up, picking up groceries or anything like that. So.
Yeah, like I'm seeing kids 10, 12 years old operate these golf carts out there, and that really concerns me. They just have no concept of the traffic rules out there. I mean, I've had to stop and swerve and let them go by any number of times in the couple years that I've lived out there.
I would encourage anybody who sees that, just give us a call, and we'll go right out and address it.
you guys could probably put something on the radio or in the newspaper to kind of remind folks of the ordinance on golf carts. I think that happened, about 3 years ago? We set that up 3-4 years. So I would say that
Well,
it's
not
time
only
for
golf,
refresh.
not only golf carts, but I mean, like I say,
Oh, yeah.
I've seen some kids that are 4 or 5 years old riding an electric motorcycle up and down the street, so.
Wow.
You know, so it's all over. We just need to.
That's not your kid, is it, Brad? Okay.
Mayor, while we have Tim up there, this would probably have it under
He's
old
pedaling
business.
down the middle of the street.
Probably under old business, but there really has, I know we put a lot of time and a lot of work into the city proper parking issue last year. And we said last year was gonna, or kind of be our grace period. I think we're still in grace period mode, it feels like, from what I'm seeing. Because some of these places are there for extended periods of time, and there's no doubt in my mind that we're seeing those. I mean, some of them are not too far from right downtown where it's on one of our main streets, but there's a number of them. I think we just need to remind everybody that it still is, now we're going for it, and we have to start ticketing them. If we're gonna have the ordinance, we need to do the work to enforce it. And I hope that we pick that up. It is noticeably better, in my opinion, than what it has been, but I do believe there are enough occurrences where I think we need to just take the time and write the ticket, so.
I'd agree, Mike, because the people that now have actually done what they needed to do, and watch somebody else that doesn't do it, and we don't do anything about it, I think, time is to start dealing with it.
Yeah, I think we're ready for that now.
And we are.
Yeah.
Chris Christensen, our animal control guy / parking ordinance, he's the busiest guy on our department, and he is 100% out there looking for the on-street violations and addressing them accordingly. And you will see, I could provide you the statistics if you want, but
Like,
Chris Christensen, yep.
like, do you have regular officers that'll
Yep.
report to him also and say, hey, we've got this problem here,
Either
you
that
know,
or
so
they'll
he
write the
don't need to
ticket
just be
themselves.
looking all by himself?
Right, no, but he's pretty good. He's a one-man army, but our officers also help out with the parking.
Yeah,
ordinance,
I get calls every now and then that people are upset that they're getting tickets, but that's just the way it is.
And typically, he contacts them, gives them, he gives them a copy of the ordinance and educates them, and then, there is a warning initially, and if it's not corrected immediately, then a ticket would be followed up.
Yeah.
So.
And Tim, I would like to also just make people aware, we are cracking down on any kind of drug use in town, rather looking for the big kingpin or whatever. We're going after whatever is out there, just so people understand. We're going to be kind of hard on them around here.
We need it.
So when we're stopping cars, be aware that you might be asked a couple of weird questions or anything like that. It's going to happen.
Just to put that in a little context, our controlled substance arrests have doubled since last year, over the last couple of years, right? And we're on pace to match or at least surpass that for next year. So methamphetamines is a pending problem. It is a problem. There's no doubt about it. There's no putting our heads in the sand for that.
Exactly. You guys got any questions on that? Because, I mean, it's a big subject for Watertown.
It is.
Anything else?
Mayor, that being said, should there be some focus, should there be some effort to look into this from this body moving forward? Is there anything that we can do?
No, I think they've got every tool they could possibly need. In fact, they've got other tools that they're working on right now with the state. I really don't want to get into detail on that, but it'll be a very positive thing for South Dakota if it does go through.
And one thing, we are revamping, or HSA has gotten a grant for an anti-meth campaign, so you're going to see a lot more in the media and a lot more education side of it. So it's going to be proactive and preventative as well as reactive.
I've asked that question myself to both Tim and Lay personally, and are you getting everything you need from City Hall, and yeah,
Yep.
They are. And just, unfortunately, it is a very devastating thing. It's not only us that's dealing with it, it's basically nationwide, so.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. I would like to mention, it's kind of new business. Glenn held a meeting with us last week between the zoo and the city, and just kind of working things out and see how everything works between the two. I don't know if you want to elaborate on it a little bit, Glenn. I thought it went extremely well.
I was very pleased too. It was Shelley, the mayor, Mike, you sat in on that, and Jay DeLang, Will Morlock, Dan Miller and Dale Christensen from the Zoo Society. Just really had a good discussion. I think it was probably the first time that everybody got around the same table and kind of hashed out some financial arrangements between the two entities. And I think going forward and starting in 2017, we'll see a little bit different arrangement between the city and the Zoo Society. But I was very pleased with the way things went.
Yeah, it was very good. Thank you. Any liaison member reports?
I've got one quick one from the Utilities Board. Flint, Michigan, water's been in the news a lot since the Flint, Michigan issue arose a couple of months ago. And just so you know, the EPA's 2015 review of our drinking water, we got a clean, no pun intended, report from the EPA on our drinking water in Watertown.
You talk about no pun intended. I had a lady call me from the lake, and she says, "Our garbage stinks out here." Pun intended. Yeah, that's what she said. I thought it was kind of funny. Any other member reports? Need to go into executive session? I do need to go into executive session. I would for contract negotiations. I do expect that there will be some action taken at this time, so I will look for a motion in a second. Motion by, was it Randy? And second by Bruce. John. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are in executive.